Time for the public inquiry into the Cambourne to Cambridge busway to resume. This is day 4, the second week of the inquiry. Can I just check, can everybody hear me? And can I just get a thumbs up that the live stream's working? Thank you very much. Before we get into the main proceedings today, I've just got a few procedural matters I need to get through, and I just need to raise some issues about documents and procedure. Firstly, just a reminder or information for those who haven't been here before, we're not expecting a fire drill, so if the fire alarm goes off, please leave the building. The nearest fire exit is the one to my left there. There's toilets if you leave these double doors, turn to your left. They're about 20 yards along the corridor on your left. Firstly, I just want to talk about a number of documents. The first one, and I'm looking to Mr. Cameron and Mr. Henderson. If you recall, on Friday, we spotted an anomaly on the sections where the labelling appeared to have been reversed. That was core document 11202, which was the longitudinal sections. The error seemed to be on sheet 11 of 17. So 2 points. Firstly, I asked whether you could double check to see if there's any other issues like that, and also we will need to discuss about getting a replacement for the drawings.
So yes, we took that away. One of Mr. Longren's team have been checking those since Friday. I'm not in a position to say that check's fully completed yet, but I'm not aware that those documents which have been checked, there's any other anomalies. But I will impress upon the need to get that check done, and we will let you know if there are any more. But so far, so good.
Thank you. And then once you complete those checks, we will need, I think, a revised document, because I think I'm right in saying those sections will be their plans cited in the order, aren't they?
That one that you specifically identified is yes, we'll produce an amended version, we'll do it in an amended number, and then we'd ask you to accept it as an inquiry document in due course.
And also, if you can advise me what the implications are for the order as drafted, if it does refer to a previous drawing number.
Yes, that's fine, we can carry that through to the extent that's necessary.
Thank you. Also, from sorry, Mr. Parker, was there anything you wanted to add to that? But Mr. Parker, on Friday there was some discussion about the Comberton Greenway. You provided a document which has been, I think that's also been, there's been some dialogue with the applicant about that. It's a sort of 2-page flyer showing the route of it. Firstly, I understood the discussion was more about the potential extension of the Comberton Greenway to the west, which doesn't appear to be shown on that document.
Yeah, I think there's some cross wires in my communication to my team members which have resulted in the production of that document, but I think actually the answer is more straightforward than we had all thought, because there are documents in the existing documentation which show the extension to the Greenway, so perhaps I can just give you those references, and sorry for sending everyone on a wild goose chase. So the walking and, I'm going to get the name wrong again, walking and infrastructure cycling plans, CD 735.
Just bear with me, please.
I'll get its title right one day. Local Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan 2022.
Sorry, it's CD 7...
35.
35, thank you.
So we don't.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got that over.
So that without you going into that plan, because unfortunately you won't find the plan there, but appended on the council's website to that policy document as an appendix is a plan. And that plan is at 725, no, CD 2511. Sorry. I'm not sure how the plan has made its way into the core document separately from the policy, but I am instructed that that plan that you see there is an appendix to or associated with the 2022 document, and that shows that's the plan that I've been referring to as showing the committed route and the indicative extension route.
The indicative extension route, Mr. Barker, doesn't appear to extend to Cambourne.
Well, I think when we're referring to it as extending to Cambourne, that is what we are referring to, that settlement, that it extends, as it were, to the edge of the settlement of Cambourne. The dotted blue line.
Ah. Right, not just the Greenway extension, because the blue line is something else, isn't it? The blue line's just a cycle route. I just want to be clear about what you're referring to.
Yes. Well, let me take that up with Mr. I'm not. In terms of
I understood that your references last week were to a Greenway.
Yeah. Let me take that up with Mr. Lee. But that in terms of the plan that's available on the County Council's website, that's the one that I was referring to.
That's the plan.
Thank you. And that's helpful to find it in the core documents as well. Thank you, Mr. Parker. Mr.
So
Cameron.
well, I'll let you finish your point, sir. Sorry,
No.
it does relate to the Comberton Greenway. I made the fatal mistake of saying that I'd finished the examination in chief on Friday, and I also need to ask about the Comberton Greenway in the light of, I thought it was going to be in the light of the additional document, but it turns out it's a document that's already in. It is dealt with in Mr. Baker's proof at 10.4, and I omitted to ask him about that, and I should ask him about it if I may. And can I also say, while I'm dealing with that for Mr. Lonergan and Mr. Baker, I've come in under the time estimate. The reason for that is that I haven't asked either of them about the Clare Hall points, because I'm putting that off until Clare Hall appear, so we'll be taking up that estimated time at that stage. I'm pretty bad at time estimates, but not that bad.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. And I need to come on to programme in a couple of minutes, but yes. So I think in light of that, and obviously anticipating a new document, I think that's reasonable to ask Mr. Baker a final question in chief before I ask Mr. Parker if he's got any questions. So yeah, on Friday, yes, thank you. We received the statements of common ground. Is there an update on other statements of common ground that any parties can give me?
Yes, so the Clare Hall one went back to Clare Hall last week, as I said it would. We are yet to hear from Denton's on behalf of Clare Hall. Hopefully we will do soon. CPPF one also went back to CPPF last week, again as I said it would, and we hope it's ready for signing, but we haven't yet got a signed copy for us to sign.
Thank you. Mr. Parker, since you're here, you can...
Yes, the version we received last week was a final version, so we've been chasing the applicant for a track changes version so we can obviously see what changes have been made to it. That was sent to me this morning at 9:16. So I'm confident, having skimmed that email, that the changes that have been made are relatively minor, and I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to come back to you, but I just need 10 minutes at some point during the day to be able to actually review those changes, and then we'll be able to hopefully give you a final version. I think today should be possible if someone's here to sign it on from both parties.
Well, it sounds like it's well in hand, so thank you for that update. Just on statements of common ground, and again, this might be seen as Mr. Cameron, you're going to be asking Mr. Baker another question in examination chief. Mr. Baker's proof mentions a statement of common ground with Anglian Water, and I'm just wondering what the progress is with that. It was obviously about the reservoir. Sorry, unhelpfully in my notes there, I haven't put a reference.
See if I've got one.
10.2, so 10.2.1. sorry, 10.2.1 on page 37.
So just to clarify, there is work ongoing to finalise an agreement both with Anglian Water and Cambridge Water. I'll have to check with colleagues from WBD as to where that's gone. It is largely, as is often the case, it has been largely drafted, but there's still some toing and froing on the wording, I believe.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Baker. Well, again, if we could have an update on that at an appropriate juncture, that would be very helpful.
Yeah. In similar vein, although it's not referred to as a statement of common ground, Mr. Baker, you refer to progress on a collaboration agreement with East West Rail, and we just wondered where that was up to. I think it's the reference is 1016 in your proof.
A very similar answer, I'm afraid. It is largely drafted, and we're still debating one or two final bits of wording. So, as soon as we have something, we will try and get it over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Also, on Friday, there was a copy of draft planning conditions circulated. Actually, are they on? I'm just going to sort of look at Mrs. Taplin at the back there. Are they on the website now?
Sorry,
the conditions. Are they actually, Mr. Henderson?
Yes, sir, they are, and you'll get those CD 2912, and if you go within that too, I think it's PDF 12 off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is. That's where you find it.
It's just a quick question on that, which might not be answerable straight away. I just wanted to double check, since those conditions came in recently. Sorry, Mrs. Taplin, Mr. Henderson's answered the question. Thank you very much. The mitigation register, which is Environmental Statement Appendix ES1, details the various measures by which proposed mitigation is going to be undertaken, and it refers to conditions. It just refers to condition numbers rather than the content of the conditions. I'm not suggesting there is any difference, but I just wanted to get confirmation that the numbering and the list of conditions that's been provided matches up with what's in the mitigation register.
We'll have to check that. I have a strong suspicion it doesn't, because I suspect it's referring to the earlier conditions that accompanied the request for deemed planning permission, but let us check that and we'll come back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Also in documents, I think on Friday over the weekend, Claire Hall provided a document following on from the round table that took place last week. I think it's what Mr. Cameron referred to as Mr. Philpott's shopping list, although it seems quite a long shopping list. But I just wanted to confirm that have you seen that?
Yes, sir, and we are considering it, and if we can respond once we've considered it, but our first step is to look at whether it's possible and practical to provide the information is step one, but can we just reserve our position until we've considered that? We've only just got it.
No, that's fine, Mr. Cameron. I just wanted to confirm that you've got it and you're considering
We're
that.
onto it, we're considering it, and we'll report back to the inquiry.
And and it obviously was helpful for Claire Hall to provide that clarification following the session that we had on the round table. Again, still on documents. This is just something I spotted in Mr. Baker, your appendices. There's you've provided, I think, a couple of drawings which are from an earlier revision of the planning drawings, which I think is in your appendix 3. And the drawings are, I think, revision P8, which I think is 2 revisions behind the submitted ones. the copy that I've got on the website, there seems to something gone a bit wrong with the PDFs in that the drawing's there, but the text appears on different pages. So can we get I'm no expert on technology. It looks like something weird's happened when it's been made into a PDF or something like that.
I can check the printing. If it's Appendix 3, then it's a record, I believe, of correspondence between CBRE and Houston Crest Properties Limited. So it may well be
right.
Contemporaneous versions of those drawings rather than the most recent controlled versions. So we'll certainly look into that, but that may be the reason why there's an anomaly, in which case there isn't effectively an anomaly.
So you're saying actually that's how they were presented to you? In which case
we will check them,
okay.
But it may well be that is a record of what was issued at the time, as distinct from what they are now. But I say we'll look into it, or hopefully somebody will look into it.
Right. Well, that might explain it in that case. Yeah. Thank you. In terms of documents, that was all the queries and points I wanted to make. Is there anything else?
Not documents.
I just want to come to the programme now, and myself and Mr. Clegg are getting quite concerned about the programme, particularly that as the latest stands, it's that some weeks currently have an unrealistic, I think, expectation of what can be achieved in the time available. And I think it's particularly weeks 4 and 7 in terms of how things are at the moment. Now, we're grateful to all parties in terms of the discussions that have been going on and the collaboration to make sure that we've got a programme that works and at the same time is fair and gives everybody an opportunity to make their points and to ask their questions. And again, Mrs. Taplin and Mrs. Vincent have got the unenviable task of trying to pull that all together. But I think we are getting a bit concerned because, for instance, there have been occasions where myself and Mr. Clegg have looked at the programme, thought there was a solution in terms of timing, but then been advised that it had already been agreed between some parties that certain parties may or may not be available. The Week 7 is currently looking very long, and I don't think we have a great deal that can be moved over into week 8 because myself and Mr. Clegg want to do some fairly sort of detailed site visits, and we obviously do need to make sure there's time for closings and for preparation for those as well. Week 5, myself and Mr. Clegg did see, because the current sort of draft programme shows the Thursday and Friday of the previous week to be sort of underused. Now I'm conscious that I think week 5 was when, if I got that correct, when Claire Hall were proposing to start.
Finished on 6.
Sorry?
Week 6.
Week 6, apologies, week 6. So it's week 5 that's got the
2 free days.
got 2 free days. So just by looking at that, it did seem that one way of particularly making the first day of week 6 a bit more manageable was to perhaps if that could be, if we could use the last 2 days of week 5, that might work. So it's really just to say that I'm conscious that given the number of parties involved, it's not a straightforward proposition to get a programme that works, but we are a bit concerned how we're going to fit everything in, and the only options really seem to be extending the inquiry, which isn't an option, so that's a false option, or trying to reduce things or change things round. I don't know, I'll ask Mr. Cameron and Mr. Henderson first if they've got any comments about it.
Well, sir, the obvious answer is to move the start of Clare Hall into week 5, which is fine by us. We have tried to be as flexible as possible because we've been happy for interested parties, objectors, to come when convenient for them, even if it interrupts the flow of our case. So we've been as flexible as we can. And the danger is we don't make good use of the time we've got early on, and then everything bunches up at the end, which is the point that you're making, sir. And if Clare Hall could be asked to start earlier, that would be good, because it's just, we've got, somebody's written on the side of this programme the number of hours per day, and a lot of that is completely unrealistic.
Yes.
And if we'll be cross-examining a lot of that, and it's just not possible to carry on for those long days. So, easy answer, move them forward.
Also, probably,
May not be that easy an answer.
well, I mean, it certainly struck myself and Mr. Clegg that would be a very straightforward way if parties were available to do that. Mr. Barker, I gave Mr. Cameron an opportunity to comment on the programme.
Well, in terms of Clare Hall's evidence, I don't think it's really for me
No, sorry,
to say.
about the programme in general.
In general, I mean, I don't. You did mention that you did have a concern about week 4, which I think is the only other week that would concern us. I don't know if that was accurate or not. But apart from that, in the latest version of the programme, it seems to me that the programme is realistically accommodating the remainder of the evidence, well, CPPF's evidence, and I will be flexible, we will be as flexible as we can in terms of attending to cross-examining those witnesses on behalf of the applicant. So I don't have any other comments about the programme. If you have concerns about week 4, we can discuss those. I think, and I know I've gone about it the wrong way around, in that my cross-examinations have taken slightly longer than I had estimated. But I do note Mr. Cameron, for example, has given relatively long time estimates for cross-examination. Obviously, he has every right to use them, but it may well be, I don't know, that he may not take the entirety of those time estimates. But I'm hopeful that in terms of week 4, we'll be able to fit it all in. I don't know if Mr. Cameron agrees with that or you agree with that, but.
Yeah, again, I think the sort of the notations that Mr. Cameron referred to do show certainly Tuesday and Wednesday being rather too long. In fact, actually, and sorry, and Thursday. I think that there was a question, because, as I understand it, Mr. Parker, you're not available tomorrow to cross-examine Mr. Saunders, Mr. Carolyn, or Ms. Reason, is that correct?
That's correct, although I had understood in discussion with the applicants, and I thought that was your understanding as well, that the intention was to complete all of those witnesses today. Apart from not Mr. Carolyn, but I discussed with Mr. Cameron and Mr. Henderson that I was happy for him to be called. I won't cross-examine him tomorrow. I think landscape's one of those issues where there will be differences of judgment. I don't necessarily see the need for cross-examination. Mr. Littlewood will present his own evidence, and it may be that those are judgments which are left with you at the end of the day. So it may be that I don't need to cross-examine Mr. Carolyn at all, and I would be hopeful of that. But the suggestion was to keep the programme moving, because I'm not available tomorrow, for him to be heard. I think that's us trying to be flexible. But aside from that, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to hear, so far as my cross-examination estimates are concerned, I'm hopeful we'll be able to hear from both Mr. Saunders and Miss Reason, having heard from Mr. Baker today.
Yeah. It was more in sort of my scribbles on the programme, just see if things could.
I appreciate that. Looking at week 4 specifically, Mr. Ellis is in there in green. I'm not quite sure what that means, but I'm hopeful that we won't need to hear from either Mr. Carolyn or Miss Reason. So we'll be straight on to either Mr. Ellis or Mr. Johnson and Mr. Lee, and. If both of those witnesses go the full timings that everyone has estimated, then it is going to be too long. So I don't know whether Mr. Cameron's in any position to give you any comfort about his likely length of cross-examination, but if not, then yes, it may be that we need to review, although I would also note that the end of the week is looking rather lighter, so it may be that spill over into the end of the week would give us an option. Well, we can catch up any time that we lose at the beginning of the week.
Okay, understood. Is there anything you just wanted to come back with, Mr. Cameron?
I'm not going to change the estimates now. The Tuesday looks completely unrealistic. I mean, I know it's not possible. Ideally, you bring CPPF, beginning of their case, forward to the previous week, but that's not possible. So I think there will be some slippage into the following week, where there is a bit more time in week 5, so long as CPPF are available. And I think if they can't do the week before, we're going to have to allow for that. But so I'm going to shut up now, otherwise we won't get through the programme for today.
No, and yes, we can't really do this on the hoof now, but so I think my final comment is, I appreciate the work that's been done so far, but please, best endeavours for all participants to try and get a programme that works. Yes?
Sorry, I don't have a microphone.
Is it possible to pass one down? Thank you.
Sorry, has there been another version of the programme which isn't on the core documents website? Because I haven't seen it, and I think it obviously does affect the councils as well, because we will have some questions for CPPF witnesses, and we have our own witness. So I'd be very grateful to be able to see any further version of the programme.
Yes, sorry. Unfortunately, I think there's so many versions of the programme flying around. The last one that was on the website, I'm not sure.
No, not the website one. Sorry, can you just give me your name?
Yes, my name's Esther Drabkin-Reiter, and I'm acting for Cambridge City Council and South Cambridgeshire District Council, and I think we haven't seen the latest version of the full inquiry programme. I see there's now an updated version for weeks 1 and 2, but we'd be really grateful if we could be included in any emails with draft programmes. Thank you.
Certainly.
Get it on the website, yeah.
If I could just ask Ms. Taplin, if we could put whatever is the latest version, even acknowledging that there'll be things to change on it on the website, just so that everyone can see where it is. Making sure that draft watermark is still very clearly visible on it.
There's significant changes towards
Since.
the end, but
Yeah.
the weeks 1 and this week are up and they are correct. It's going forward that I need to review it, even if it's week by week at the moment, get some more details up on the website.
I think that'd be helpful, and I would just ask everyone who's participating in the inquiry, particularly other interested parties. I appreciate their patience in trying to find a sort of a final one, but please do keep your eye on the website, because it's not finalised yet. Although I'm sure Mrs. Taplin will be happy to let you know about the latest state of play. Thank you very much. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask Mr. Cameron for his final question or questions in examination chief. Is there anything else that anybody wants to raise at this stage?
Sorry, sir. Just one issue. I've got a 1-page document that I want to put in for Mr. Saunders. I've raised the possibility of it with Mr. Henderson, who I understand is going to be handling Mr. Saunders. He hasn't had the opportunity to properly consider it yet, but I just wanted to flag it up, and I'll give you an update once Mr. Henderson's had the opportunity to consider it.
It's fine. I'm not going to object to it going in. I just would like to know a little bit more about it before Mr. Saunders gives his evidence. It's not, for example, dealt with by Miss Hurst in her rebuttal proof. It seems to go to something she wants to say or Mr. Parker wants to say about her topic. So I just need a bit more information before we get to Mr. Saunders. But the actual sheet itself, I'm fairly relaxed about.
You've answered my question, which was, what is it? And why haven't we seen it before?
So it relates to Mr. Saunders' response in his rebuttal proof to the concerns raised by Miss Hurst about the assessment of carbon emission benefits, and it shows the data that was available at the time that the environmental statement was drafted and the assessments that fed into the environmental statement were drafted. Ms Hurst essentially makes the point that up-to-date data was available. Mr Saunders has said it wasn't. This sheet shows what data was available when the environmental statement was drafted, and then it feeds into other concerns that Ms Hurst has raised about the environment, about the assessment.
So what is it? Is it a published document, or is
yes,
it
it's a web, it's a screenshot from the government's National Archives with the date on which the website was archived, and it shows you what data was available to the analyst carrying out the assessment on the date when Mr Saunders extracted the data according to his evidence. I can show you what it looks like without showing the detail, if that would help you, sir.
Well, at this stage, I mean, Mr Henderson said he wanted to understand more about it, but didn't seem to necessarily have a problem with the sheet. And so, just so I'm clear, this is a point sort of in support of Ms Hurst's rebuttal. Is that correct?
Well, the point she makes in her original proof and then her rebuttal, and in relation to, in particular, Mr Saunders' response to the concerns that Ms Hurst raised. So it really flows on from his justification for the data that he's used and what he says about it.
Mr Henderson or Mr Cameron?
Yes, I mean, as I said, I'm relaxed about the actual sheet of paper going in. I'm no more illuminated on quite what the point is being made, but of course you've got an updated appraisal that's appended to Mr Saunders' proof of evidence, so we can have a discussion about what was or wasn't available in November 2022, but it seems to us that what matters for you is the up-to-date appraisal that's in front of you. And it doesn't go to that point, and I'm struggling to see where it is in Ms Hurst's rebuttal proof, but perhaps we can be enlightened on that before Mr Saunders gives his evidence.
Thank you. Right, in that case, Mr Cameron.
Thank you, sir. Mr Baker, I'd like to ask you about the Comberton Greenway, which you refer to in your proof of evidence at paragraph 10.4. Now, an additional document I thought had been put in on Friday, but it's not on the core documents. I don't know whether we've all got that, but I did want to ask two questions on that. But if everybody else hasn't got it, I'll have to ask you about the other documents. But I thought an application had been made for it to go in, and it was going to go in, and I'm told that it was sent in by CPPF, but it's not on the core document website yet. Please, could it go on the core document website? It'll be in the CD in the additional in the inquiry document series. It's a 2-page document. I think it's 2-page, maybe more, on Comberton Greenway. Do you have it, Mr Baker, or not? If you don't know what it is, so you can't say.
I'm reasonably familiar with the documentation around the Comberton Greenway in general, but are you talking about the consultation flyer for the Comberton Greenway?
Looks like it.
Yeah.
But you don't have it, sir.
Yeah.
You have got it.
I
Go,
do,
good.
but obviously I've received it by different means.
Is that the document that came through yesterday that I was waiting to clear whether I can put it up on the website?
Right.
I'll do it now.
In that case, apologies. I think the problem's mine. I didn't make it clear to Mrs Taplin that we were happy to put that on the website, which we are. So apologies if that's caused some problems and confusion.
Well, Mr Baker, you need it because I want to ask you two questions about it. But while that's being put up, let's not waste time. Let's take up, if we can, can either do it in That's where I wanted to start. But just give me a second. I'm going to adjust. I think we probably need to take up core document 2511, please. Although mine's now gone blank for some reason. Here we go, 2511. And first question, which the inspectors have already anticipated, does this plan show any proposed extension of the Greenway to Cambourne?
No, it doesn't. In terms of any form of committed extension. What the plan shows is the map from the LC WIP, which is a document that the County Council produces as a result of a government request, and it shows aspirational cycling infrastructure. The plan shows clearly the Comberton Greenway, which goes to Comberton, and it shows in dotted an extension that goes forward through Bourne Airfield, which there is another document that has not been uploaded to the core documents because I don't think it's been deemed relevant until now, which is the appendix that provides a prioritisation matrix of schemes within the LC WIP. We can provide that for upload if it's deemed to be helpful, and that makes it clear that there are no clear plans for this extension, and an extension through Bourne Airfield would likely to be provided by the developer of the Bourne Airfield scheme, that development of course being dependent upon provision of the Cambourne to Cambridge scheme. So without the Cambourne to Cambridge scheme there is no connectivity other than perhaps along the Madingley Road, again provided through section 106 monies from the developer to Cambourne.
And where under current proposals does the Comberton Greenway go to and from? What are the start and end points?
It connects Comberton to Cambridge. So it heads east from Comberton.
And Comberton is south-east of Cambourne.
Correct.
If you've got that other document now, which may be on the website by now, I don't know what the number is, but it'll be at the end of the 29 series.
Not yet.
It's not yet. Well, perhaps you could, I don't know whether you can get it by some other means. If you knew what it was, I know it would help. It's called Comberton Greenway, and it's a consultation document.
Yes.
And there is a map with the Greenway shown on it with all sorts of notations.
Yep.
Do you have that?
Yes.
And if you look at that, can we start with Grange Road, notation number 12, please? Do you have that?
Yep.
Does everybody else have it? And it says, proposals on Grange Road will be minimal, but tie in with proposals for Cambourne to Cambridge project, which includes crossings for people walking or cycling and improved junction arrangements to increase safety. So, question for you, is the Comberton Greenway designed to be consistent or inconsistent with the Cambourne to Cambridge scheme?
If the Cambourne to Cambridge scheme follows the proposed route down the rifle range, then it is consistent and compatible. Were the scheme to go down Adams Road, then there would clearly be a clash of interests between the two schemes. I'm not sure I've got the correct document, but I'm familiar with enough probably to answer some of the questions.
Well, and I think you're familiar enough with this next point, but we'll find out. If one looks to Hardwick, there's a dotted line there. So not part of the thick green line, but a dotted line. And it says Greenway route, this is to Hardwick, subject to landowner agreements. Now, are you familiar enough with the scheme to know whether landowner agreements have been reached for the scheme and or for the extension to Hardwick?
There are certainly landowner agreements outstanding for the scheme. There are some that I'm aware of where I know that there are still conflicts. Hardwick section, I wouldn't want to answer to specifically, but the greenways do not have acquisition rights, and therefore land is only acquired by negotiation.
And where is it that where you are aware that there are, you say conflicts, but you mean lack of agreement?
Yeah, I believe there are some issues outstanding with Mr. Sadler where we pass through his land in the Coton area. Again, I would have to provide more detail of that.
And you say issues. Has Mr. Sadler agreed or not agreed?
I believe there is no agreement.
And in terms of the cycle route that we looked at that goes on to Cambourne, do you know, and if you don't know, please say, whether there's any agreement with landowners on that?
That's dependent heavily on the Bourne Airfield scheme, so it would go through the development, and I think we can be confident if the airport development proceeds that in due course the developer would provide that scheme. Clearly that land is now owned by the consortium that's acquired it, and so it will be dependent on the scheme proceeding.
But how does it get from where at the moment it turns south down Long Road and goes to Comberton?
Yes.
How does it get to Bourne Airfield?
That would also have to be through acquisition. I'm not sure I can update you on the details of that because that's not part of the current scheme.
Would you be able to obtain information as to whether agreements have been reached? Not now, but would you be able to do that?
I can certainly check, but as I say, that extension on towards there is effectively no extension onto Cambourne at the moment, other than in the LC whip. So the answer won't be, in some cases, that we're negotiating. It's because that's not a current section of the scheme at all. But yes, I can provide further update on the scheme.
Thank you very much. And last question. If the Greenway could be extended to Cambourne, not proposed at the moment, but if it could, would it be a substitute or an attractive substitute for the active travel route along the emergency maintenance track for the applicant's proposed scheme, which is before this inquiry?
I don't think it would be an attractive substitute. I think it will be an attractive alternative. It goes through rural areas, so as a leisure route that people might use on a nice summer's day, I think it could be attractive for people wanting to commute to places of employment and education from Cambourne. I don't think it's going to be as attractive, particularly at night, in terms of things like safety and security. So it's not a substitute.
Thank you. Those are all the questions on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Now I shall ask Mr. Parker to ask any questions he's got in cross-examination.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Baker.
Morning.
Just on that last point then, in terms of the use of the maintenance track by cyclists and pedestrians, you suggested that the maintenance track alongside the busway would be more attractive at night. Just explain that, because as I'd understood it, there wasn't going to be any lighting alongside the busway. So why do you say that it would be more attractive for cyclists at night if there's no lighting?
Well, maybe after dark would be a better phrase than at night, but at outside core hours, particularly in the winter, the Comberton Greenway goes through sort of woodland areas. It's quite remote. Clearly, with buses on the maintenance track and probably more traffic associated with it, it will feel like a more secure route.
Okay,
yes, it
so
won't, but it's not intended to be lit. Absolutely.
So I mean, do you envisage any material use of the access and maintenance track by pedestrians and cyclists after dark, given the absence of lighting?
So the intention would be to provide solar studs which provide illumination so that people could safely use it, and yes, one would imagine commuters would use it after dark because that's a means of access. And certainly when we've consulted, for example, in Cambourne, having active travel access to the city, which is for an active cyclist a convenient distance away, is quite an attractive feature.
So when you say there won't be lighting, you mean there won't be street lamps with down lighting,
No.
but there will be
Solar studs
lighting along the entirety of the route with lights in the tarmac, essentially, is that
yeah,
right?
it's a low-level lighting. Obviously, the issue of things like bats and other wildlife is important, so it provides a very low-level of illumination to help people keep on the road, not to provide high level of illumination.
And we're obviously going to hear from Ms. Reason this afternoon, but her assessments then, as you understand it, have been carried out on the basis that there is going to be low-level lighting along the entirety of the maintenance track and the busway.
It is. They are very low level, so it's not something that is like a street light in terms of its impact.
Sure, I appreciate that, but just to be clear,
Yeah.
all of the ecological assessment that's been carried out has been carried out on the basis that there will be lighting in the tarmac along the entirety of the access and maintenance track and the busway, as far as you understand it.
I think lighting is overstating it. The solar studs are not lighting in the same way as street lighting goes.
Well,
Yeah.
Mr Baker,
Yeah.
just so that we can clearly understand what's
Yeah.
meant in view of the answer that we got last week about lighting.
Yeah.
When you refer to solar studs, in physical terms, what would somebody see?
They are sort of small little insets in the path that glow rather than providing a spotlight sort of feature. It's more to enable cyclists to see where they're going.
Is there any illustration of them in the core documents anywhere?
Probably not. We can provide them. I mean, we are getting into a detailed design point.
Yes.
But yes, we can.
But in effect, you're saying that there'd be nothing physically above the level of the tarmac.
It's like a little sort of glass lens, as it were. I can provide an
Yeah.
illustration.
Okay.
thank you, and I appreciate these are detailed design points, but obviously highly pertinent to, for example, the ecological assessment. I mean, on the one hand, they need to provide enough illumination so that cyclists and pedestrians can cycle along the track safely after dark. That's the point of them, I presume. So they are going to provide sufficient illumination to enable that to take place. That's right, isn't it?
It's navigational rather than providing illumination of your surroundings. So it's more like a cat. I mean, it's a bit like a cat's eye almost. It's not illuminating the area.
Okay. And just so that I'm absolutely clear, all of the ecological appraisal that's been carried out has been carried out by reference to the specific form of lighting that you are proposing.
Whether or not it is, I think we are not talking about a form of lighting. We're talking about something that's basically a guidance tool.
Sure, but just answer my question.
Yeah. I believe so.
You believe so? Okay, then just a couple of other disparate matters about the maintenance track. We obviously heard from Mr. Lonergan about how the track was necessary for maintenance vehicles and safety reasons. As I understand it from your evidence and the drawings, the maintenance track is going to be 3.5 metres wide. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, that needs to accommodate, obviously, two-way pedestrian and cycle movements, as well as we'd understood it, utility vehicles, potentially emergency vehicles, travelling up and down. I mean, that's obviously a 3.5 metre is, as it were, the width of a single lane carriageway, give or take. What arrangements have been put in place to enable pedestrians and cyclists to travel two-way up the maintenance track, while you've also got utility vehicles going up and down the maintenance track.
Well, I think you put to Mr. Lonergan on Friday, there will not be a steady flow of utility vehicles, but there will be utility vehicles in the same way as they have to access existing active travel routes for maintenance purposes at the moment. So those vehicles would need to proceed at a controlled speed, probably using hazard lights. There will need to be some sort of operating manual in due course that guides that. But that is similar to the arrangements you get at the moment on the guided busway and on other routes in the area and indeed around the country.
But it is right, isn't it, that there is the potential for conflict between those utility vehicles and emergency vehicles using the access and maintenance track and the pedestrians and cyclists who will be walking and cycling along it?
There will always be a potential of conflict where there is more than one user of any piece of transport infrastructure.
And then swales, as we understood it and looking at the drawings, there were going to be swales, and I think we saw there were swales for at least some of the route, if not much of it, between the access and maintenance track and the busway. And we heard from Mr. Lonergan that one of the advantages of the access and maintenance track was that emergency vehicles could drive along the access and maintenance track. But if there are swales in between the access and emergency track and the busway, what effect will that have on the ability of emergency vehicles to access the busway?
So a swale is a wide, shallow ditch. It provides an alternative means of drainage to the sort of classic hard civil engineering drainage using pipes. Much of the year it is likely to be completely dry, given the nature of Cambridgeshire, and in some times of year it may be lightly muddy, for example. It would not be a standard route that you'd use all year round, but in terms of the needs of an emergency vehicle, it's not like a ditch full of water that you simply can't cross. It might be a bit muddy and a bit inconvenient, but in the context of an emergency access, it shouldn't be a barrier to that.
Mr. Parker, can you make sure that you don't go too much into areas of detail that are covered by other witnesses, bearing in mind the scope of Mr. Baker's?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Mr. Baker does give evidence about all these matters in his proof of evidence,
I was going to raise that, sir, but Mr. Baker dealing with it, but if it goes any further, these questions should have been put to Mr. Lonergan.
Yes.
Mr. Baker, just now moving on then to the, and again, I don't think these questions are anyone but you, but if you feel they're not directed towards the right person, then tell me. Now, the intention, as we know, is for the buses to be optically guided, and we heard from Mr. Lonergan about how that works. But what is the current position in terms of the optical guidance technology for the buses, as it were? Do you know exactly what system you're going to use, and it's a sort of off-the-shelf system and you'll choose between 2 or 3, or is it a system that will be developed specifically for this busway? How will that development of the optical guidance technology work?
So optical guidance is probably an easy expression. What we're talking about is basically sensor-based, in that there are a range of things, whether it's optical on the visual spectrum or, for example, lasers. There are various different types. You may be aware, and there is a CD reference for it, that the Guided Transit Modes Order that accompanies the Transport Works Act was amended. I haven't got the number right in front of me, but it is a core document. That was amended to enable such technologies to be applied in the case of Transport Works Act order. The government, and specifically the Department for Transport, is funding a programme of schemes looking at the use of guidance technologies, and so we are currently trialling a technology based around a combination of vehicle positioning, sensor guidance, laser, which is LiDAR guidance. That system was operational and the Cavforth trial for about a year in Scotland, running on live highways and indeed a live motorway. And we are currently trying it in Cambridge on public highway as well as private highway. I believe there's an ongoing trial in Oxford as well. So it's very much being developed and supported by the Secretary of State for Transport as one of the programmes that her department is funding.
But in terms of then the guidance that you intend to use on the busway, is it fair to say that at the moment it's uncertain insofar as it depends on the outcome of the trialling that's taking place at the moment?
That appears to be a market leader. I think it is likely, clearly from a procurement point of view, we would go back to the market at some point in time to decide whether that was still what we felt to be the best version. From our point of view, the important thing is to verify that there is an effective and safe solution out there, which clearly is a priority.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but I'm trying to ask these questions in a neutral way. But so is it right to say that you don't know which system you're going to use at the moment?
We have not made a commercial commitment to a system. There is a system we're trialling, and so that clearly is one that we may decide is the right one. Were there to be another one coming along in a year's time, we are procurement agnostic on the point, as we have to be.
Yes, I appreciate that. But then in terms of, you say you're at the moment, as I understand it, there isn't, as it were, an off-the-shelf system which you can purchase. You're trialling one option at the moment, and if a better option comes along, you might trial that in due course. I'm not saying you're tied to the particular option at the moment, but it's right that so far as the option you're exploring is concerned, whether you can use it or not is still to some extent uncertain because you're trialling it. Is that right, or have I misunderstood?
I think that's a little bit of a simplification. At the moment, we use a system which has operated satisfactorily on live motorways in this country, so it's gone a little bit beyond the purely experimental point of view. It's provided by Fusion Technology, and they are now installing the equipment at factory with Alexander Dennis buses. So it's a technology that is being fitted to conventional buses, not experimental vehicles, and Alexander and Dennis are now able to get to the point where it can be installed at the point of sale at the factory. So again, it's not something that is being retrofitted, for example. So that's certainly the forerunner as things stand at the moment.
And in terms of timings for all of that, are you able to give any indication as to when the guidance technology and the buses will be available for use?
Well, the technology is available for use today. It's operating probably today somewhere in Cambridge. We've got a good 2 to 3 years before we'll be looking to actually have vehicles on the road, so that gives me plenty of confidence. It's important to say in terms of this sort of guidance, and I think maybe Mr. Lonergan made this point, at a very simple level, quite a lot of the people who drove here today will have had cars with automatic lane keeping assist. This is not science fiction. This is increasingly technology which is becoming day to day, and it's rapidly moving.
But it's right to say, isn't it, that the technology that's used will, you will tell me more about the precise process, but will need to be licensed or approved for operation on the busway. Is that right?
The vehicles will need to be type approved. There isn't a defined type approval necessarily for this because the vehicles themselves are type approved, and one of the reasons we want to use a standard bus is that it's already gone through the type approval process. However, we will need clearly to be confident that the vehicles can operate on live highway, bearing in mind that we are looking at Transport Works Act order. The buses will not necessarily be working on a public highway, which means that there is a different level of scrutiny. To that extent, we are following a safety assurance process somewhat more akin to ROGS as operated in the rail sector, with an independent competent person reviewing the safety of the process. The buses would not necessarily need to be guided on public highway. We think in the long run it is likely that they will be approved for that. Indeed, for testing purposes, they are already approved for that, but it is not a prerequisite.
Okay, and that process, then, as I understand it, has yet to that approval, and I hear all of the caveats that you give them, but in terms of the actual process, that approval has yet to be given, as matters stand. Is that right?
Well, there isn't a specific approval as such. So the The ROGS process is an ongoing one of hazardous workshop. There isn't a final certification needed. In terms of operating on public highway, then we will be checking the legal position, but we are not currently beholden to the need to operate under guidance on public highway if that's not the case. Important to also add that all buses will have a safety driver for the foreseeable future. So that will obviously be in place were there to be concerns about operation on live highway. But as I say, 2 or 3 years out, we are already operating on live highway in the city. So, I do feel reasonably confident in that.
And we obviously have the existing guided busway which operates in a different way to the intended optical guidance system. Is the intention to have buses which can operate on both busways, or will they be only operate, will they only operate on one of the 2 busways?
No, clearly interoperability is very important, and that's one of the reasons why we are looking at a busway. In very simple terms, the easiest solution, we can fit guide wheels onto an existing optically guided bus, using optical as convenient shorthand, I think is the easiest phrase to refer to it. We are also likely to trial using that system on the existing guided busway. That work hasn't yet happened, but given that there are upstands, we're fairly confident following a trial that we will be able to operate a bus on that without actually needing guide wheels, but it will be straightforward to put guide wheels on if we felt that was necessary from a safety perspective. And
just in terms of that, then, I appreciate trialling on the guided busway yet to happen, but let's suppose that doesn't happen for whatever reason. In terms of fitting the guide wheels onto the optically guided buses that are being tested at the moment, is that something which is happening as part of the trial that's being undertaken at the moment, or is that something that you foresee will happen? It doesn't need to be trialled because you can just fit the wheels on it. At the future point in time.
They are fitted to a wide variety of buses already. There's nothing, that's a completely straightforward process that we would do if we needed to do it at that stage.
So Mr. Baker, can I just go back to, you were just talking about type approval, but you did mention that because it was a transport works order, it would be different because it's not on a public highway, but as I understand it, the buses would be going from the order route onto the public highway. So how would that work?
The bus will be type approved, absolutely. So one of our prerequisites in this is we're looking for standard production buses from an economic point of view as well. The last thing we want is a sole bus provider and to limit ourselves. So the buses will be type approved, whether or not the guidance system is approved for public highway. I think was the point that I was being asked about, and I think the point I was making was, were it not to be, then as we cross, for example, the Cambridge Road in Coton, we would not operate under guidance if that was necessary. The same applies to the existing Cambridge guided busway. So if you look at the existing guided busway, there are long sections of guidance, there are junctions where the buses come off guidance and the buses go through the city centre without guidance. So it would be very similar to what happens now, other than a different form of guidance.
Thank you.
Just following on from that very briefly, so I understand it. If this were entirely busway, so there's no public highway or at all, what approval, if any, would you need for the use of the guidance technology on the buses or the buses themselves in order to operate those buses? As I have understood correctly, that you wouldn't need any approval.
We reviewed the technology, and about the only formal requirement we found actually was about things like electromagnetic interference. It is not a clearly defined process. Clearly we need insurance and we need to have comfort that we are operating a safe system, and that is why voluntarily we are following the ROGS process, because we believe that gives us confidence from an operator point of view, from an authority point of view, from an insurance point of view, that we have a safe system, but there isn't a defined process in the same way. Back to the type approval point, physically just getting the buses even to the guided busway, they'd need to use highways. So we would, whatever we did, be looking for a conventional type approved bus.
and this comes back to a point that Mr. Underwood raised, or a question Mr. Underwood had earlier in the process. What if through that vehicle type approval process, or the voluntary independent process that you're undertaking for the, as it were, busway element, throws up a safety issue that requires, for example, some change to the infrastructure, whether it's lighting or some other change to the infrastructure? What implications will that have, both for the environmental assessment that's been undertaken and for the order scheme as it's proposed?
So, as Mr. Lonergan, I think, explained on Friday, this is not infrastructure driven. It's not driven by beacons, curbs or anything else. It uses a combination of machine learning where the route is effectively learnt. So the bus has within it, if like a digital model of the area, and it can navigate there. It also uses things like cameras and LiDAR technology to detect obstacles. It specifically does not need the provision of external physical objects, lighting or the like.
So your position is that whatever safety issues might feasibly be thrown up by the approval process or the auditing, I don't know how you're describing it, the voluntary auditing that's being undertaken, that won't necessitate any changes to the infrastructure or the physical development for which permission is sought pursuant to the order?
I mean, clearly at detailed design, the scheme will be further designed, but in terms of substantive change, we don't see a need for substantive change.
Thank you. I now want to turn to the route appraisal exercise, which I think is the sort of fundamental focus of your evidence that was undertaken by GCP. And again, just by way of background for the questions that I'm going to ask. It's right, isn't it, that CPPF and CPC have engaged extensively with the applicant in respect of GCP's proposals for the scheme?
Yes.
Now, I'm not going to go through all of that. There's a statement of common ground which is going to be agreed. But it's right, you can't be in any doubt about what their views about the scheme are, what their concerns were, and what they wanted GCP to do about them.
I think we are and have been very much in doubt because their position has varied significantly over the years. So at the point where we were assessing an inbound online busway, they were rather adamant, particularly through the local liaison forum, of which CPPF and the parish council was a part, that they wanted a central tidal flow system. I think thereafter they were promoting a route up the A428 towards the Girton interchange. We've then seen the scheme Mr. Lee produced in 2021, which in results the independent audit, which was a sort of series of bits of improvement. But talked quite a lot about traffic signal control, I think, rather than design of anything through the cemetery. Then there was most recently with, I believe, the objection, the version of that scheme that had an inbound central bus lane. Mr. Lonergan and colleagues put a lot of work into explaining that. And then most finally, with Mr. Johnson's proof of evidence, we saw a scheme which was a near side inbound bus lane. So we understand CPPF and the parish council's opposition to the scheme. Their position on the matter has remained somewhat difficult to pin down.
Well, doesn't all of what you've just said reflect the fact that CPPF and CPP's concern all along has been that GCP should explore in greater detail the extent to which the constraints upon the delivery of an in-road scheme could be overcome?
No, I don't think it is, and I think particularly at the point where we were exploring it, CPPF and CPC were not in favour of that particular option, and that probably hasn't helped the situation particularly.
So which particular?
Around 2018, when we consulted on the consultation that led to the outline business case and supporting reports, there were three options: an inbound online busway, a tidal flow system, which was very much supported by the local liaison forum, including CPPF and CPC, and an offline route. And at that point, CPPF and CPC were very much promoting the tidal flow system. I believe CBAG probably were as well, which required gantries, which were, I think, eventually recognised to be problematic.
Yeah, but just to be clear, when you're talking about a tidal flow system, that is a scheme that would operate within the existing A1303 corridor.
As a central tidal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as it were, a scheme that operated
Yeah.
within the corridor, that was an option. That was.
It was assessed because the GCB has been responsive to the views expressed by CPPF and CPC. That it was addressed and assessed as an option. Personally, I'm not convinced it would ever have been deliverable, but there was strong pressure from the community that was an alternative. We responded to that pressure. We assessed it. We consulted on it. So I think that was exactly an example of how the GCP has been directly responsive to the position CPPF and CPC has taken.
Okay.
I don't want to interrupt, but we have a speed limit on the speed of delivery, because it's quite difficult to write it all.
Sorry.
down.
Yes.
But again, Mr. Baker, you seem to portray, or you do portray that as an inconsistency or a difficulty in pinning CPPF and CPC down. But in reality, that's not the case, is it? Because CPPF and CPC's position has always been that GCP should explore whatever options are feasible to deliver a scheme within the A1303 corridor. That has always been their concern.
It has been their concern that we look at alternatives. They have not always promoted options within the 1303 corridor. GCP has assessed options within the 1303 corridor, and I think part of the problem has been that whilst we have already assessed those, CPPF has now belatedly started looking to promote options that we've already assessed.
Okay, well, let's look at the options appraisal. We're going to look at that in due course. Let's take up CD 1.0601, please.
So CD
1.06.01, which is a consultation report. You've got that, and then if you turn to PDF 25, there's a table. Sorry, it's PDF 26, internal page 25.
Yep.
Table 4.2. And this is a table from the key consultation findings, area options, which is the third item down, the third theme. Yeah, you've got that. Now we see option area 1, central 1. Now, this terminology doesn't help the newcomer to this document, unfortunately, but Mr. Baker, you and I, and we can confirm to the inspectors, know that is essentially a bus lane along Madingley Road. Is that right?
more or less, yeah.
More or less. Now that received, we can see majority support,
Yeah.
so 66.8%. And if we look at option area 1 south, which again, for the benefit of those who are new to this document, is an off-road bus lane north of Coton. Is that right?
Yep.
So option area 1 south is the off-road bus lane north of Coton, received majority opposition, so 65.5%.
Yep.
And it is fair to say, is it not, Mr. Baker, that the option which CPPF and CPC would like the GCP to have explored in greater detail has majority support as recorded in this consultation document.
It has a high level of support indeed.
And the option which GCP has chosen as its preferred route has majority opposition as a result of it.
I think you're missing a couple of steps in the process. So after this was the consultation which informed the strategic outline business case. As a result of it, both options were taken forward. So it's not fair to say that we somehow leapt from that to an offline route.
I didn't say that.
I think it was
if you could just for, I didn't say that. Just if you focus on the question, though, it's right, isn't it, that the option which GCP chose, I can add the word eventually chose after a further options appraisal process as its preferred route, has majority opposition. That's correct, isn't it?
As a result of this consultation, we took both combinations forward. We did not make a decision on a final route.
I know that, Mr. Baker, but just answer my question. Yeah. I've asked it a couple of times now.
So there is greater level of support for an online route. That is one of the many criteria that we look at when assessing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And just my question, third time, the option which GCP chose as its preferred route has majority opposition. That's right, isn't it, at this stage?
At this stage, yes.
Now, let's come on to the options appraisal process. There were three parts to that process, and you deal with that in your evidence, written evidence, and in your evidence in chief. It was obviously a key stage in the decision-making process, and it's right that by the end of stage 3, you had a preferred option for the route. In terms of the options appraisal stage 1, that obviously was, we don't need to go there because I want to, in the interest of time, focus on the key stage, which I think for our purposes is stage 2. But you, at stage 1, you obviously identified a whole range of different options, and you narrowed it down at stage 2 to a limited number of options, right? And if then we go to stage 2, because it's right, isn't it, that stage 2 was a time at which you were deciding whether to go with the off-road route, which eventually formed the scheme between, broadly speaking, Madley Mulch and Grange Road, or the online route along the A103. 303. The stage 3 process was concerned with a different area of the scheme that we're not concerned about here. That's right, isn't it? So that sets the scene. Then stage 2, CD 12008. Please. If you can turn, please, to section 4, which is PDF 37. So I'm just catching up with you.
This is the final options list.
Yes. So, sorry, I'm just catching up myself. Yeah, final options list. Right.
Sorry, Mr. Barker, which page was that again?
PDF 37.
Thank you.
And we can see here, these were the options that you were considering, and we've got low cost A which is waterworks. We can see this is, if we go down through the drawings, page 38, which is a waterworks park and ride, plus the inbound inroad scheme, and then your other low-cost option, which is the same inroad scheme but with a Scotland farm park and ride. Yeah, and so for our purposes, they are two variants of what are otherwise the same scheme in terms of the arrangements for the A1303. Is that right? Now, in terms of the arrangements for the A1303, there are drawings which appear later in the document. So if we take the Scotland Farm variant, because that's obviously the option that you went with, but it doesn't matter, at page 103 and following, we can see the proposals as you assess them. Yeah?
Yeah.
That's right, isn't it? And we can use of the option that you were exploring through this options appraisal process. Now, if you scroll in, and I'm just going to touch on this, if you scroll into the document, you can see, for example, that at that stage you were proposing a busway to the north and a shared use footway cycleway to the south of the road. Yeah.
We were not proposing it, we were assessing it.
Sorry. Okay. Well, let's
it's
not
important distinction.
worry. I mean, okay. You were assessing its possibility, and at that stage you had the bus lane to the north and the shared use footway cycleway to the south, which is where it exists currently. That's right, isn't it? And we can see from the notation on the drawing that, for example, the width of the shared use footway cycleway, which was the premise of this assessment, is 3 metres wide. Yeah.
I will take your word for it. I'm not in a position to confirm the engineering detail of what's in these drawings. These were a preliminary, well, they weren't even preliminary layouts, they were optional layouts that were set out many years ago, not the current plans that have been put forward and assessed more recently.
Sorry, what do you say when you say more recently? You mean the plans that have been the subject of the CPPF alternative that have been assessed, or
this was an early assessment of that option.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. But I don't want to ask you. I don't think it's unfair fair to. I mean, you can see from the notation on the drawings. I wish, for my purposes, that there was an easier way for me to ask you these questions. But
sorry, Mr. Clark, there's a whole series of drawings. Could you just give us a drawing that perhaps that you're looking
page
at?
104.
Yeah.
In the bottom left-hand corner. So there were two drawings on there. Either one towards the left-hand side of the drawing, you can see a 3 metre notation.
It's not easy to see.
No, you do have to sort of zoom in to the document itself to be able to see this.
Yes, I can see where.
Road on the screen.
Yeah.
Are you on the top of the
Either one, they have the same notation, but take the top one.
Yeah.
You can see there's a north marker, and then below that there's a cut line to the next sheet on the far left of the sheet, and then immediately to the right of that you can see a 3 metre notation, and then you can see a 4 metre notation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the general point that I'm making, I understand why you did it in light of Mr. Lonergan's evidence, is that you were assessing, put it this way, a wider overall width of lane, busway, shared footway, cycleway than is the subject of what is the CPPF drawings that were appended to Mr. Johnston's proof. Yeah.
We were designing something that we considered to be safe and deliverable, and I think Mr. Lonergan attempted to explain that that may or may not apply to the drawings appended to Mr. Johnston's proof.
Yeah, Mr. Baker, you got to play within the rules. You're entitled to caveat, Mr. Baker, but that's a completely different point, and it doesn't answer my question. So just focus on the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
These widths are different to the widths in Mr. Johnston's.
Yeah, they're in all cases wider, aren't they?
I'm not sure the cycleway is. I thought he had allowed 3.5 metres. So the bus lane would be wider, but I'm not sure there'd be.
And the overall lane width of the traffic lanes is wider, as I understand it.
They will be retained at a standard 3.65 metres, which really is the minimum acceptable.
And so it's right, isn't it? And I think again, I don't think I'm asking anything unfairly, and I think, to be fair to you, you would justify what you did here by reference to what Mr. Lonergan said about the evidence. But it's right, isn't it, that the reason why at this stage the in-highway option was discounted was by virtue of the width of the carriageway, which would then have consequential impact on, for example, the Madingley Wood SSI, the American Cemetery, the potential need for CPO and so forth. We can go through the detailed options appraisal, but that's a fair summary of why the in-highway scheme was rejected at this stage. Is that right?
So the width of the carriageway was certainly an important criteria, but as I said before, when you were asking about consultation, we look across a wide range of criteria. We don't just look at one factor. So certainly it was one significant issue that would have been taken into consideration.
Yeah, and it's right, because you repeatedly said, well, we've looked at an inbound busway, we've looked at what CPPF was saying, we looked at an inbound busway, but what you didn't do, and you may justify this decision, what you didn't do was identify or explore the extent to which the constraints, for example, posed by the Madingley Wood SSI or the American Cemetery could be overcome through, for example, reduction in lane width or width of the busway. That's right, isn't it?
We didn't explore undeliverable options.
Yeah, okay. Just again, an answer to my question. You may say it's undeliverable, but you didn't explore the extent to which the constraints that you had come across in your assessment of this option could be overcome, did you, through the options appraisal process?
I think we did. I think we looked at what we felt was deliverable.
But where did you demonstrate to what extent the constraints that you'd identified, so for example, the potential impact on the Madingley Wood SSI could be overcome? Where do we see that in this document?
So what you will see, there is a paper entitled, there was quite a lot of debate around this issue at the time. We had a workshop around it after this stage, and there's a paper entitled Madingley Road Quick Wins, where we provide a couple of cross sections that at the time were produced really to illustrate the point and the difficulties of exactly the point you're raising, that at basically adjacent both the cemetery and the SSI, we couldn't fit. And I think the cross sections there, if I can, someone can help me with a reference.
I mean, I had not understood that was the purpose of the Quick Wins document. That was exploring a completely different option, which were highway quick wins, not the exploration of an in-road.
It was also looking at, but it was very useful in the dialogue around that time to explain what we could and couldn't actually achieve at that location.
Okay, so you say that if you look at that document, you will find exploration of the extent to which the constraints posed by the SSI and the American Cemetery could be overcome through, for example, tinkering with lane width.
Not that overcome, because, as I think Mr. Lonergan explained, we are required to work with standards, not with cross sections that simply don't comply to standards.
Well, that wasn't, to be fair, that Mr. Lonergan was in no way as black and white about it. He accepted that one would exercise a whole range of judgments about whether departures from standards were appropriate. I'm not going to go back through Mr. Lonergan's evidence. The question and the focus of your evidence, though, Mr. Baker, and I come back to it, I've asked the question a number of times now, is as part of this options appraisal process, you didn't actively explore the extent to which the constraints that you'd identified which led to the rejection of this option could be overcome through variations to this particular proposal, did you?
I think it was explored in as much as we could deliver within standards.
Okay. In terms of then you refer to the audit, which is CD 827. Again, I don't want to take up time going through the detail of the audit. You referred in your evidence in chief to the fact that CPPF submitted their proposals for an alternative to the auditor, and I think you're making the point that the auditor therefore had in mind that the alternative proposed by CPPF for an inbound scheme, which it was saying should have been explored in greater detail, yeah? That was CPPF's position to the auditor.
Yeah, the auditor issued a call for any interested party to submit evidence. CPPF did. There was a caveat to what CPPF put forward at the time, which I think was a realistic caveat, which I have noted in my evidence.
Well, I'm not constraining what you want to say. If you want to refer to it, it's a matter for you, Mr. Baker. It's not quite an answer to my question. But
what was your question?
Well, let's start again, and by all means qualify and caveat, but it will help us move through things more quickly if you actually answer the question first, yeah? So you referred in your...
Sorry, Mr. Baker, I was getting a bit lost there because Mr. Baker was looking for a reference about a caveat, and then you've asked another one, so let's everyone finish the bits they're doing, so carry on.
Do you want me to ask my question, or do you want to hear from the caveat?
You carry on. If the caveat's relevant, you can take us to it.
Thanks.
It's just a reminder, let's try and keep the flow so everyone can keep up. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, so again, by way back, you referred in your evidence in chief to the fact that CPPF had submitted an alternative to the auditor, and you made reference to the fact the auditor had issued a call for evidence, and CPPF responded to that call, provided the alternative scheme in the document that you referred to, yeah. Now, the only question I want to ask you, any point I want to make, is it's right, isn't it, that the auditor, in doing the undertaking the process and the auditing process that was undertaken, the auditor didn't carry out any detailed appraisal of the comparative merits of the CPPF alternative scheme by comparison with the scheme that the GCP were proposing, did it? That wasn't the function of the audit.
No, the purpose of the audit was to assess effectively the approach that had been followed and to verify it. The call for evidence, well, it was issued by the auditor, but I think our understanding was he was looking to see whether there was something that had been missed. And I think if he felt a third option that none of us had thought about, that solved all the problems, had come forward, he would have been entitled to say as a result that he felt there was something that had been fundamental that had been missed, and therefore that would need to be assessed. And clearly the advice of the audit was not that. So I think that was the purpose.
Yeah, it was as it were a high-level review of the process that had been undertaken.
Yeah.
So you would never expect, if you look in that document, for the audit to have given any indication either way, for example, as to whether, to come back to the point I've made previously, the constraints posed by the Madingley Wood SSSI could be overcome through a variation to the inroad option which the GCP had assessed.
The auditor was looking at whether the process followed had been sound, and I think if he felt that the assessment was deficient in that regard, he would have been entitled to say so.
Sorry, Mr. Baker, I keep having to remind you, you need to either say yes or... My questions always have a yes or... Well, 99% of the time, unless I go right, have a yes or no potential answer. So give your caveat, but answer my question, yeah? So what's the answer to my question?
Could you repeat your question, please?
When you look at the independent audit report, you won't therefore expect to find any detailed appraisal on the part of the auditor as to the extent to which the constraints, for example, posed by the Madingley Wood SSSI to which those constraints could be overcome in any way through, for example, reduction in lane width or reduction in speed limits, all the other things that CPPF says should have been assessed?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Baker, thank you. Those were all the questions I had for you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is probably a good time to have a break, and then I'm conscious there are some other people who'd like to ask you some questions, Mr. Baker. I'll make it 11, so we'll adjourn now. We'll resume at 11:20. Thank you. if you've any questions. Hopefully the microphone's on. You have to press the little button at the front if...
Sorry, I'm going fast.
It might be worth just moving the microphone a bit closer so that it's picking up.
Good morning. Mr. Parker, representing CPPF, has for the most part asked the questions I had. I'll admit I'm somewhat baffled by Mr. Baker's answers, but I'll decipher them in my own times, mindful of the discussions that we had at the start. But if I may just clarify a couple of Mr. Baker's points in his POE specific to Coton Orchard. So, Mr. Baker, in your proof of evidence referenced under the inquiry core documents as C for Charlie, D for Delta 26, 01 APP W11, subsection 11.
Sorry, could you go a little slower, perhaps?
I absolutely can go slow.
Just your proof of evidence,
Oh, right. That's fine. Yes, that's fine. Which section?
Subsection 11.32, page 42, if that helps. And shall I read it out? During the scheme development stages of the project, the issue of the orchard was rarely raised, and specifically during the stage 1 consultation, when online and offline options were considered, it was not a significant issue for stakeholders such as Coton Parish Council and CPPF. So my question is, Mr. Baker, do you know of a Mr. Adrian Shepherd, the major infrastructure development project manager for the then Cambourne to Cambridge Better Bus Journeys project that subsequently, this was in 2016, that subsequently became the Cambourne to Cambridge Better Bus Scheme in 2018, and he was representing the applicant, Cambridgeshire County Council, and responsible for the early development stages and consultations.
Yes, I knew the late Mr. Shepherd.
Very good. Does the GCP hold records of communications and in-person meetings involving Mr. Shepherd with stakeholders such as myself, representing Houston Crest Properties as the landowner and Coton Orchard as the tenant, not to mention myself as a 30-year resident of Coton, and Manda Fuller, who was representing Coton Busway Action Group, Mr. Mark Abbott for Coton Parish Council, as well as various members of CPPF at the time, commencing 7th of September 2016 through to 13th of March 2018. Would it surprise Mr. Baker that the number of these communications were in the double digits?
So I think you asked me two questions. I think the answer to the first one, do we keep records? The answer is yes.
Very good.
And to the second one, is it in double digits? It may be. I think yeah.
Great. Are you familiar with the GCP C2C online consultation survey questions? Specifically that there is no reference to Coton Orchard, only a section on page 41 saying north of Coton.
sorry, to document, I think you can be asked about page 41.
Well, just simply that the surveys in the consultations didn't refer to Coton Orchard specifically, but north of Coton. And my point is, considering Madingley Road is more correctly north of Coton, whereas the orchard is part of the village, might there have been some confusion for respondents?
I'm not sure which document you're referring to.
In the consultations, was Coton Orchard referred to specifically, or just simply a route alignment north of Coton?
I couldn't answer that off the top of my head.
Okay.
But Ms. Gaisley, do you have a document that you're referring to? Because we
well,
would like...
actually, it's just their online consultations at the time, because Mr. Baker says that there was no stakeholder concern about Coton Orchard during the consultations, and
have you got the date of the online consultation?
I've just got some screenshots of my own responses, which allows me
Which
to...
were when?
In some of them are 2016.
Yes.
But goes through to 2022.
Right.
So my question was, my next question is, when was the preferred route, the one that bisects Coton Orchard, published and voted on by the applicant?
So that option was taken to the Executive Board on the 1st of July 2021.
2021. Could it be that until an official announcement was made, the public at large would not have been aware that the applicant would select a route contrary to the majority of respondents, and it was mentioned earlier that 65% was in opposition. Applicant agreed that contrary to the majority of respondents, and that once it was made clear, it became an issue, leading to the 24,000 petitions and over 300 objections that have brought us here.
I think there was ample awareness of the scheme. There was strong opposition to it from the early consultation, as Mr. Parker was describing earlier. So I don't think it was somehow news when that scheme came forward.
Excellent. And that's exactly my question, because you said during the scheme development stages, the issue of the orchard was rarely raised. It was not a significant issue for stakeholders, such as Coton Parish Council and CPPF. So might it be that it's not something that's just arisen in the last couple of years, and actually stakeholders have consistently opposed a route that cuts Coton Orchard in half?
I think the section of my proof you're alluding to is one where there was a suggestion that we denigrated or didn't recognise the significance of the orchard. The significance of the orchard is clearly recognised in the environmental statement for the scheme, but what I was seeking to explain in response to that comment was that when I looked back at the consultation responses from a number of significant organisations such as CPPF and Coton Parish Council, I, to be fair, was quite surprised that there was no reference to the orchard, and that was simply a matter of fact. I did a word search through that and the 2017-18 response, so that was simply my explanation to that question.
However, Mr. Baker, that's not what you wrote. You wrote that the orchard was not a significant issue for stakeholders such as Coton Parish Council and CPPF.
Yeah. And that is based on their responses to the consultations.
So was it a significant issue or not?
To them, seemingly, it was not.
How did you come to that conclusion?
Because they did not refer to it.
Well, I'll have to wind back to the statement I thought earlier that you'd actually said just now that it was a significant issue throughout. Is it just that they didn't name Coton Orchard specifically?
Yeah, they raised a range of concerns about the landscape of Madingley Hill and things, but as it happened, the orchard at that point was not one that they raised as a particular concern.
So the numerous meetings that I held with Adrian Shepherd and then subsequently with Peter Blake and then subsequently with yourself, that included members of the Parish Council, Amanda Fuller representing CBAG and CPPF representatives dating back as early as 26, where we specifically wrote and specifically said that we don't agree with any route that bisects Coton Orchard. Did that not happen?
Certainly any meeting with myself did not happen. I've never met with you until last week.
Well, in your proof of evidence, which I don't have the whole document to hand, you've actually got one of my letters that you point to as one of your appendices from 2020, which I said that I have an issue with you cutting the orchard in half.
We're aware, and I included that letter which you indicated that your preference was to extend the garden centre over the line of the route, and that letter is included, as you say, in one of my appendices. But we've never met until last week. And so that definitely wasn't a correct reference to discussions we've had. There may have been other meetings. I've seen documentation in meetings, for example, with Mr. Shepherd. The point I made in my proof of evidence was simply to illustrate the point, if it is pertinent, that CPPF and Coton Parish Council did not seek to make reference to the orchard in their responses to a number of consultations.
Well, in the online consultations where it refers to north of Coton, again, that includes bisecting Coton Orchard. And as for us never having met before, I obviously am not very memorable, but we've met on at least half a dozen occasions in Coton Village Hall, which I specifically asked you questions. But I don't want to submit new evidence. Let's move on. I think I've made a point, and we've already said we're short on time. So my one other clarification is about same document, your proof of evidence, but now we're going on to page 22, section 4.78. In which you write, with regards to Coton Orchard, a possible slight realignment to the north of the current scheme was proposed by GCP in October 2022, as noted in the environmental statement addendum CD1 10.06, page 14, figure 2.3, but not adopted following consultation with Houston Crest Properties Limited and CPPF. So my question is, within Coton Orchard, this is written in the environmental statement report, so these aren't my words. Within Coton Orchard, 490 fruit trees were recorded by the topographical survey. For the purpose of this assessment, it has been assumed that all 490 trees will be felled. Mr. Baker, how many would be felled if the realignment were adopted?
At the moment, I wouldn't be able to give you an answer to that question.
Well, how many metres would the new alignment have shifted the preferred route?
It's about 20. The point at that point was about specifically the trees that are now agreed to be veteran trees and avoiding those.
Right, so you say the veteran trees, or actually in the document you wrote the older trees were protected. And given that the 12 trees in question form a unit that is a block from north to south, and the proposed busway is east to west, which of the trees are going to be saved?
The alignment we looked at was to seek a way through those to avoid those 12 trees.
Does it?
It avoids the trees. If you want to discuss details about the wider issue, then Mr. Alder will be giving evidence later on, and he is an arboricultural expert, so I would suggest any detailed questions on trees go to him.
Okay, well, I just...
Though just my benefit, just so I'm clear, this is, when we're talking about a slight difference in routing.
Yes.
Can you just explain what that was?
There is...
Sorry, I think your proof says a possible slight realignment to the north.
If you refer to, it gives you a CD reference 11006, page 14. If you follow that reference through,
Yes, I think I've got that. Thank you.
yeah. So it was a slight realignment to the north, specifically to seek to avoid the trees which are subsequently been agreed to have veteran status.
And just so I'm clear, so I'm looking at that plan. There's a number of trees,
Yeah.
sort of circles.
They're the red circles.
In red. Are those the 12?
Yeah.
The 12 trees. Sorry, I'm conscious you might not have that plan in front of you.
I do actually have that plan in front of me. But the slightly northern alignment doesn't show the order boundaries, so I just taken the assumption that it would be approximately the same boundaries as on the preferred route put forward. So if you draw those lines as well, it also cuts through different old trees. So my quick question was, given it's a section of 12 trees, which would have been saved had it moved, had we agreed to the slight route alignment?
Well, I think had we changed it, we would have endeavoured to retain all 12 of those trees in their current location.
And so that would have been possible with your suggested northerly
Yeah,
alignment?
so that the order boundary is a sort of legal limit within which we have to work. Everything we do, whether it's the bringing plant and equipment on site, etc., has to be done within that. We have no right to stray onto land beyond it without agreement. So the order boundary doesn't mean that the scheme is that wide. It means that it's and other people in the room will be better qualified than me to explain this. It's the limits within of deviation for any works undertaken.
Oh, I understand that. What I'm saying is you still are on over some trees. Okay, let's move on. Table 8.1 of the environmental statement lists 4,870 metres of hedgerow, which are habitats of principal importance within the order limits. The loss of 1.29 kilometres of hedgerow, HPI classified as significant effect at county scale. So of the 15 hedgerows that the scheme cuts through, how many would the realignment save?
Can I suggest that questions around hedgerows are addressed to the environmental team, please?
Absolutely. Would Coton Orchard and CPPF land still be bisected under the proposed alignment, a realignment? Does it in fact increase the area south of the proposed busway, further reducing the practically accessible fragment of the Orchard and CPPF field?
Yeah, I think we totally recognise we had a very cogent response to that, particularly from CPPF in that regard, and we understand that it probably did have a viability impact. Understood.
So given all this, Mr Baker, are you surprised that stakeholders did not consider that the realignment north a genuine engagement or wish to adopt the proposal?
I'm neither surprised nor not surprised. We recognised an issue had been raised, we endeavoured to find an alternative solution that addressed the issue raised, and we consulted with stakeholders to see what their views were, and it was entirely up to the stakeholders to say in either direction whether they agreed or not agreed. That is the purpose of the consultation.
So it's your consideration that this alignment addressed the issues that the stakeholders had?
There was a very specific issue that had been raised, and we recognised it was a concern. At that point there was still debate with ambiguity in the guidance whether the trees were strictly veteran or not, but either way we sought to find a solution to an identified problem. I think that was a valid approach to take.
I would say you didn't look very hard, Mr Baker, but thank you for the inspectors to let me clarify those points. I don't want to take up any more of your time.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gazy. Just before I ask Dr. Treacy to ask you, can I can I just go back to the northern option going through the existing gap? Can you just say a bit more why that wasn't pursued? You mentioned something about
I think we had
responses from CPPF.
Yeah, there was a response from, and I paraphrase from Ms. Gaisley saying that she wasn't particularly keen on either option. CPPF expressed strong concerns that by moving to the north, we increased the severance of their field, basically creating a larger area that was isolated to the south. And also, as you'll observe, by the time as we rise further up the hill, you then need greater amount of earthwork, so it takes up more width. And as I said in my response, we put forward this as an option. We were happy to receive queries on it, but we sought to find a way that you might address a issue that had been raised.
And so the reason you didn't pursue it, was that purely based on responses you got? Or was there any sort of call from within the design team to actually pursue this, if it would, as you mentioned, avoid having to remove those trees?
No, we looked at it as a variant. If the stakeholders had come back and with a degree of enthusiasm, then we would have been happy to take it further forward. But given that they did not, then it didn't seem particularly advantageous. It pushes the bus stop further away from the Coton village, for example, which would be another negative impact. There's also, and again, Mr. Caroline would be better asked about this, there has been debate over the years about visibility of the bus scheme, and as you move it up the hillside, it potentially becomes more visible. So I'm not a landscape architect, so I'd really rather Mr. Caroline was asked about that, but I know it is a concern that has been raised at various times.
Thank you. Can I ask Dr. Tracy, can you just introduce yourself and who you represent?
Yes, good morning. My name's Dr. Marilyn Tracy and I'm here representing Coton Busway Action Group this morning.
Thank you.
And I've just got a few questions for Mr. Baker about the 2015 consultation. And if you go to your proof of evidence, I've got page 19, 4.4.3, where you refer to the consultation report, which I think is CD10603. So it's the Better Busways Journey, CD10603, the consultation report on the...
I think it's the last line of 4.4.3 of page 19.
Correct. So this is the Cambourne to Cambridge Better Busways Journey Consultation 2015 that I'm referring to. So I have some questions about whether the principles of fairness and the government consultation principles were adhered to in this consultation. Would you agree that the underlying principle of fairness should be at the forefront of the process of consultation?
Yes.
Are you aware that there was considerable controversy around the 2015 consultation document?
I'm aware there was considerable controversy generally around that consultation, yes.
Around the consultation document?
Not the document, well, the consult in general, the consultation including the document.
So are you aware that in 2016, when the local liaison forum was set up, which is a body made up of councillors and representatives of all the towns and villages along the Cambourne to Cambridge route from Cambourne to Cambridge, that body voted unanimously to request that they were involved at an early stage in the production of consultation literature so as to positively engage the public, and that particular care could be taken to ensure accuracy of factual information. And that resolution was made specifically because there was so much disquiet about the 2015 consultation, which was the only one at that time that had been published.
I'm aware the local liaison forum wants to be more involved in the design of consultation materials.
Because of the response to the 2015 consultation?
That was a response, that was a query from them, and so that was responded to, and they were involved more.
So just turning to that document that caused the controversy, do you believe that Coton Village is correctly represented in that document?
It's a figurative representation of the built-up area of Coton. I wouldn't want to argue whether it's scaled correctly, for example.
So its size may or may not be proportionate?
It looks broadly, as this is a very simple schematic, and it is dealt with, I would say, in a manner comparable to the way Madingley, Hardwick or Highfields Caldecott have been dealt with in that document.
So might it be significant that its location is shown south and west of the Cambridge Road and the High Street? Might that have been an indication to the people of Coton that the busway was north of Coton?
I think the proposal was that the busway would be north of Coton.
So are you saying that Coton Village was correctly represented in those diagrams?
As a schematic, it looks as if the treatment of Coton is proportionate to the way other villages have been dealt with in what is a schematic diagram.
Okay, so I'll go back to accuracy of diagrams and of information in consultations in a moment. But is it not a principle of consultation that proposals have to be realistic?
In general, they should be. There are occasions where options that perhaps are not so realistic are taken where, for example, there's very strong stakeholder preference for something to be considered.
So was it a principle of this consultation that the proposals had to be realistic?
It is a principle that we look, if we follow the tag process, we look at a wide range of options. So, for example, this process started, as we've said, with around 34 options in a series of packages. They looked to the north, to the south. Some of those options were discarded very quickly, and I think were probably not realistic, but it is a requirement of the appraisal process to look at those options objectively and determine through that process whether or not they are realistic.
So, Mr. Baker, I wasn't talking about the options appraisal, I was talking about this particular consultation document and the options on there. Shall I move on to those? Looking at Area 1 Central on this document, why was this option included if the GCP are asserting so strongly that for a plethora of reasons it would not be possible to put a bus lane down Madingley Road? You've said in your previous answers we didn't explore undeliverable options, and yet that appears on the consultation document. Why does it appear on the consultation document if it's undeliverable?
I think there are two answers to that question. First, this was an early stage consultation which was looking at principles. These were not engineered solutions. These were looking still at options, and clearly there is an existing Madingley Road. It would be extremely remiss of the GCP not to consider an online alternative. And as we have repeatedly pointed out, we did look at an online alternative. What I think Mr. Lonergan explained at some length on Friday was it would be extremely difficult to provide that alternative to standards without significant impacts on either external constraints such as the American Cemetery or the SSI or adjacent properties. I don't think Mr. Lonergan said in engineering terms it was absolutely impossible, but there would be balances, and that's where we would hit either the protected constraints or property. So it was looked at as an alternative. I think it would be remiss had it not been looked at that stage.
But you've said here we didn't explore undeliverable options. So was it at that time considered to be deliverable or undeliverable?
At that point in time, there was no engineering appraisal really done to any great detail. At that point in time, it was a valid option to consider, as I said.
Right.
Yeah. So, for example, I mean, yeah, okay.
So at the risk of interrupting you, can we just go into specifics about how specific this consultation was about other factors and how much detail you've gone into about that? So the journey times given in this consultation for Area 1 Central and Area 1 South are precise to the minute. So we have a 7-minute for the GCP preferred option, a 7-minute predicted journey time, and a 14-minute predicted journey time for the on-road option. Those are very precise figures, as are the calculations of how much the two options would cost. How can those have been looked at with such precision, down to the minute? It's not 8 to 15 minutes or 5 to 10 minutes, it's actually a specific time on the consultation document. How can you be so specific about some things and say, well, other things just weren't looked at in detail?
The journey times, I imagine, and as I said, this was before my involvement in the project, this is a long time ago and not pertinent to the decisions that have been finally made. However, I imagine the journey times may well have come from modelling at the time, and cost estimates are prepared at different levels of detail as projects progress. So you start with a fairly crude assessment of the typical cost of a typical cross-section, and as the project proceeds, you get more granularity about design and more accuracy.
But what I'm trying to illustrate is that some of the process behind this went into the decision making that the executive board made to go on to the next step.
This went to the decision making that the executive board made at the SOBC stage, which was to proceed to further consideration, and at that point they agreed to consider further options, which eventually led to consideration of an online versus an offline. So they made a decision to proceed with the project, which is what you do at SOBC stage. At that stage you do not select a preferred route.
Okay, one last question. Were the LLF involved in the production of the 2017 consultation documents?
I believe this is going back a very long time, so I certainly don't want to give a strong view. There was certainly, at that point, the LLF was active, so I'd imagine they may well have been, but I really can't give you a hard answer, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So is that the end of the questions? Thank you very much. Now, myself and Mr. Clegg have got some questions with it. Can I just check? I was only expecting Cotton Busway Action Group and Coton Orchard to be asking questions. Is that correct? Yes, and then the S is developing the hand. So, do you want to ask some questions first? So I'll now hand over to Mr. Clegg.
Just a few questions, Mr. Baker, please. I'd like to ask you on a range of things. Towards the beginning of your proof of evidence on page 9, tell us something about the city and governance sections, which are the Greater Cambridge Partnership. And in that section, tell us about the decision-making process of the partnership and as the executive board, which I think we heard about from Mr. Freeman. But also talk about the joint assembly. Who's on that?
Right, so the executive board is the decision-making authority for the partnership. That is the formal joint committee, which comprises an elected member each from the County Council, the City Council and South Cambridgeshire District Council. Those are the three voting members. In addition, there is in attendance a representative of the business sector, which is now the Combined Authorities Business Board, and the academic sector, which is de facto Cambridge University. Further to that, at the discretion of the chair, the Mayor of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough may be invited to attend also as a non-voting member. So decisions that need to be made are made by the executive board, and in general the approach is to seek consensus rather than voting where possible. So that's executive board. The assembly is a scrutiny body, so before decisions go to the executive board, they go to the joint assembly, and that has three elected members from each of the constituent authorities.
So a total of 9, not 3?
9 elected members plus 3 academic representatives and 3 business representatives. So for example, whereas the university sits on the executive board, Anglia Ruskin University is also represented on the assembly. The assembly doesn't formally vote. It provides scrutiny. The chair of the assembly attends the executive board and provides input, and as with any other, whether it be select committee or local government scrutiny committee, the executive board clearly take seriously the views that are expressed by the Assembly. They're non-binding, but they are listened to and often will steer the approach taken.
Thank you. Staying in the same area of governance, just moving down the page, you then make reference to the combined authority,
Yep.
which came along relatively recently.
Yeah.
And there's a number of instances where you refer to the mayor, and then you've got to say the mayor and the combined authority. Now, what is the relationship? Does the mayor not head up the combined authority?
The mayor is the, if like the, I suppose the chair of the combined authority is probably the best way of looking at it. So the mayor is directly elected as an individual. The combined authority,
They're not appointed.
no, the combined authority, again, a bit like with the GCP, there's a board which combines a representative of each of the constituent councils. So Cambridgeshire County, Peterborough, East Cambridgeshire, Huntingdonshire, South Cambridgeshire and Cambridge City all provide.
So they appoint.
They appoint, yeah, yeah, and then there are some additional representatives. I think the Police and Crime Commissioner, I believe, and as I'm getting to the edge of my knowledge, there are a few other people who also attend the board. But it's yeah. So that board is a decision-making body. And there are some powers vested in the mayor, but a lot of decision-making sits with the board rather than the mayor.
But the mayor is not separate from the combined authority.
Not in, he's elected separately.
Yes.
But he is, de facto, the organisation he runs is the combined authority.
Yes. But from what you say, some decisions related to the combined authority can be made independent of the mayor. That's what you said in your last answer.
I think that the combined authority can vote on things. The government's, we've picked out a few pertinent points. I believe there are some things where the mayor has to be supportive in the same way as there are things where the county council also needs to be supportive.
Yes.
It's defined in the constitution of the authority. So I think some decisions where if the mayor is not in agreement, the combined authority, I think in some cases can't overrule what the mayor wants, but conversely, the mayor can't necessarily overrule some decisions on the combined authority either.
One of the things you mentioned in terms of decision making is this principle of subsidiarity.
Yeah.
I think the general tenor of what you're saying is that the existing arrangements remain. Given that, where does the mayor's role in transport come, given that there is already a highway authority?
So the responsibility of the combined authority is for setting transport policy. So the local transport and connectivity plan, which is the overall transport policy for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, is set by the combined authority. So including the mayor, and the specification and operation of bus services also sits with the combined authority. The responsibility for highways sits with Cambridgeshire for the county area and Peterborough for its own area, also as highway authority.
So I don't want to interrupt some of these Mr. Baker, I think, will help you as much as he can. We do have the combined authority order in the core documents, 2017 order CD 530, and it sets out the legal arrangements. It defines the combined authority. It identifies the mayor, and it identifies powers exercisable by the mayor.
Thank you.
And we also have the Constitution as well.
think that covers that in any event, Mr. Baker. Moving on to paragraph 421. Yeah, we're talking about the outline business case and the objectives of the scheme. Just wanted to ask you about one of the bullet points that mentioned there, the Oxford-Cambridge arc. How would this scheme assist with connectivity on that arc?
Well, the Oxford-Cambridge arc has gone through a number of iterations under different governments. The principle, I think, of investment and growth within that broad arc between Oxford and Cambridge has been a consistent theme for quite a few years now. And effectively, this scheme, the route in from Cambourne, is the eastern end of that overall corridor. So as whether or not it is with East West Rail, or as I think was still valid at the point when these objectives were set, there was also discussion about an expressway, of which the Black to Caxton Gibbet is probably the one genuine manifestation, or the general principle of growth, of which clearly Bourne Airfield and further growth at Cambourne are also manifestations. That policy, although it may have changed in how it's presented, has remained pertinent. And as I say, this is the eastern end of that broad geographic corridor.
Just move on to the options which you talked about already about in some detail. And as you say that at stage one, it's page 19, there were a large number of options on your long list. You mentioned 34. Did the options that were considered at the very beginning, did they always concern alternative ways of bus movement, or any other form of option considered?
The general focus was on buses because of the existence of the existing guided busway. Indeed, some of those early options explored whether you could connect into one end or the other end of the existing guided busway. So there was a general principle that buses would be looked at. There has been some work done to look at alternative modes, and that particularly in the time when the Mayor's Cambridgeshire Autonomous Metro was being developed, some additional work, which I have, I think, referred to, and I think is in the core documents, has looked at alternatives. But the conclusion there was also that it would be a rubber-tired vehicle as being the most practical solution.
Did that extend into the long list?
The long list was broadly assuming around buses, yes. The long list was assuming a rubber-tired solution, not a tram solution.
Stage 2, we talk about the park and ride options selected, and you got two options, Scotland Farm and the waterway sites. Why did you settle on those two?
So there was a wider selection process which is documented, where we looked on at about 10 different alternatives, and including other sites in the vicinity of the waterworks and other locations such as Bourne Airfield, and even further out towards Cambourne. That went through a sort of two-stage optioneering process in the document that is cited, CD 1305, that informed the end of stage report, CD 1306. So there was a sort of a wider review process, which again went through the same form of multi-criteria appraisal that's been applied in other elements of the scheme.
So the two that you mentioned, they were the two that performed more satisfactorily?
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, there were a number of sites that had some similarities, but those eventually we picked up sort of an inner alternative and an outer alternative as a way of sifting down, and then compared the two. And it is also, fair to say there was a lot of concern in Coton about the waterworks site, and because the two were finely balanced, in that instance, we felt it was equally appropriate to look at Scotland Farm as an alternative.
On page 21, paragraph 4.7.2, you're referring there to the route of the busway with the West Cambridge campus, and you refer to, I think, concerns about impact on equipment at the premises there. Can you just elaborate a bit what you have in mind? Is it vibration?
It's electromagnetic interference and vibration. It's a very high-spec electron microscope, and I have inspected the equipment myself. It's, as you may be aware, it's not unusual for these sort of issues to be raised when you're looking at schemes like this, but it was situated at the very south end of the campus.
In certain buildings?
It was in the Department of Material Science and Metallurgy, is referred to. It's a specific building, and at the south side of that building, which is at the south side of the West Cambridge campus, there is this microscope in a sort of floating cage, effectively.
Yeah.
And as a result, had we run straight along the south side, we would have been very close to it. Whereas what we agreed was we used Charles Babbage Road, which already carries bus services.
Yes.
Whilst there might be some interference, it would be no really significantly worse than the fact the buses that are already running along Charles Babbage Road.
And the concern expressed by the parties there, that is now been resolved.
Pardon?
The concern expressed by the parties at West Cambridge, that's now been resolved by
Yes,
the
yes. Yes, we have an agreement with West Cambridge for the alignment and the land requirements.
Still with the page to 4.711, page 22, and just a question of detail about the online section, St Neots Road. I read what you say there is including traffic management measures in the scheme that's going forward. Can you just tell the inquiry something about those?
Yeah, so the background to that section was we had looked at an offline route. There was very, very strong local concern about that, which we understood. We did then look at if we ran online, we looked at possibility of a bus gate to restrict through traffic, and that also created concern from business. What we've now done is, you'll see from the plans, is effectively changed the alignment at the eastern end where the scheme reaches Long Road to try and change the priorities to slow existing traffic, and so deter perhaps the use of St Neots Road as a through route, and other features such as the removal of parking bays that obviously cause a degree of disruption to St Neots Road, and in addition clearly ensuring that the existing rather substandard active travel route is upgraded, not just to ensure access travel, but also really to ensure that sort of cyclists, for example, are deterred from using the St Neots Road as well. We did a little bit of internal assessment on effectively whether we felt we could work within the existing levels of traffic on St Neots Road, and came to the conclusion that the impact on traffic was not major.
I think you've mentioned already the benefits of pursuing this option is the integration with the existing network.
Yeah.
What is the extent of the existing bus network?
So the existing guided bus network, there's a series of services that feed in effectively into the north of the city. They come down past the Science Park, which is one of the key stations to the north. They then go on road through the city centre, and then near the station go back onto a guided busway heading down on the south towards the biomedical campus. There are other projects, some of which you'll be aware of, such as the CSET project, that also fit into that. So the aim is to complement that existing scheme. The guided busway doesn't have physical manifestation in the city centre because of the problems of the city centre, which I think are well documented as a medieval city centre. We can provide. I can provide a map of it if it's helpful or anything.
Is that better? Right. Apparently my microphone was off. Yeah, that would be helpful, Mr. Baker, yeah, to provide that. And then widening the question from guided buses to existing buses, you touch on those on page 34, paragraph 923, where you refer to a lack of alternatives for local residents, and you identify the current number 4 service and tell us where it goes. Is that the only alternative, the only existing bus service along the A Road route out?
The main service. There are one or two other services in the area, but that's I suppose the main service in the area.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
There is, I couldn't give the precise numbers, but I think that's the regular one. There are a couple of longer distance ones that serve the corridor, and there's at least one that serves the villages. I wouldn't be able to give you the number of it off the top of my head. I think the 905, which runs along the...
Sorry?
I think there's the 905, which comes out from St Neots, and I couldn't off the top of it give you the number of the more local one that serves some of the villages.
Right. Yeah. In view of what you've said, it might just be worth checking that.
I can provide details on that, yes.
And is there an intention as to what will happen with those existing bus services if the busway goes ahead? Is the intention route services on the guided busway would in effect replace what currently exists, or do you expect there to be a continuing service along the existing roads?
It's hard to say because, as you know, currently bus services are privatised and deregulated,
yes.
So they are operated in effect at the whim of private sector operators.
Yes.
We have the proposal and potential for franchising of buses for Cambridge and Peterborough.
Yes.
However, no commitment to that has yet been made. There is a new piece of work being undertaken to review that as an option.
Yes.
If a franchise is put in place, it would give greater public decision making. So but either way, it's not in our gift to confirm whether an existing service would be maintained or would be subsumed into the busway services.
You just don't know now?
We don't know.
Well, turning perhaps onto the franchising point, if the scheme does go ahead and the busway is constructed and provided, how would you actually secure implementation with services running along it?
If the scheme goes ahead, there are really two scenarios. One is with franchising. If franchising moves ahead, then it will need to be agreed and funded by the combined authority because the expenditure that will be needed, and we would expect at that stage that if it proceeded, that the infrastructure available would be utilised. If franchising doesn't proceed, then we would be effectively carrying on as we are now.
Yes.
and as with the existing guided busway, it becomes a relatively attractive proposition for operators. We have obviously done some market testing with bus operators, as you'd imagine.
Yes.
And you know, these are attractive compared to very rural services where you don't get much patronage. Park and ride services are particularly lucrative, I would say, for operators. So services would be provided commercially. We would hope that, for example, there'd be opportunity to subsidise out-of-hours services, as is often the case, but that is better done through a franchising arrangement, should one be put in place.
But there are some references to frequencies of service. I think I've seen intervals of 5 and 6 minutes, so many an hour. That's already been referred to at the inquiry. I think in written evidence there's references to start and finish times. I think the service is perhaps running as late as midnight. If there isn't a franchising arrangement, presumably those times and frequencies would be largely up to operators.
Indeed, and some of those references, I think, come from the environmental statement, where we've taken a very precautionary approach to appraisal, and indeed we've considered services that we would not necessarily be sure would operate, but from an environmental appraisal point of view, clearly we need to be conservative and assume and ensure we've looked at the worst case, although we would be delighted if there was demand for early and late night services and they could be provided.
Yes. And looking at the alternative, if the franchising model is pursued and implemented, from what you said earlier in response to my questions, that's a responsibility of the combined authority?
Yes, and the mayor.
And the mayor?
Yes.
And is it one of those functions, given the permutations that are available at that level, that requires the agreement of the mayor?
It requires the agreement of the mayor. The expenditure associated with it would require the agreement of the authority and therefore the applicant.
So yes, so the expenditure requires the agreement of the combined authority and the...
So yes, the mayor would need to be supportive of the franchising arrangements.
Yes, but he also needs to be supportive of the expenditure.
Yes, and therefore the expenditure would need the support of the county council as well.
So both the county council and the mayor have to be on side and behind franchising.
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not a legal constitutional expert, but that is my understanding of the constitution.
No,
as Mr. Cameron said, it is.
It's set down somewhere, and of course there will be the opportunity to ask the mayor himself.
Yeah.
But that's helpful. I've got no further questions, Mr. Baker.
Thank you. Mr. Baker, just picking up the issue about when bus services would run. I'm conscious that different witnesses have referred to sort of after dark and nighttime running. I've heard what you said to Mr. Clegg there, but are there, and you talked about the assumptions made for the environmental statement. Yeah. So just so I'm clear there, and this may well be a question I asked Mr. Saunders if it's not for you. But what was the actual assumption of when buses would run? Obviously, there's evidence in terms of sort of wildlife, which might be sensitive to activity after hours of darkness. There's also been mention of sort of safety, how running buses might sort of increase the perceptions of safety for other users. So the first one, do we know when bus services are going to run, and also and again I might have to ask this to someone else, but are there any particular sort of mitigation that relies on the bus services either running or not running at a particular time?
There are certainly some pertinent issues that Mr. Lewis and Ms. Reason, I think, will be able to take you through. There has been discussion around particularly impact on bats and noise and vibration, but I think they will be able to cover those when they explain them. It's probably not best that I try to.
Okay, thank you. Are there and again, this may well be something for a planning witness. I mean, would there be any proposal within either the order or sort of conditions that would actually restrict or limit when bus services could run, as far as you're aware? Or again, if you're not in a position to answer that, then
There has been discussion, which I think Mr. Lewis will cover, with Clare Hall about potentially looking at the impact of early morning, late night services and whether or not they would be electrically operated. But again, I think Mr. Lewis will be able to take you through where we are getting to on that appraisal.
that's fine. In terms of, I'm conscious that obviously the route that you're proposing is going. You're proposing the acquisition of land. And in your details of the various options that were gone through, how was the minimisation of land acquisition sort of factored into that? And was it a criteria or not? I mean, you've obviously listed the sort of I'd say the sort of strategic and operational criteria. I'm just keen to understand how land acquisition sort of influenced options and at which stages that was taken into place.
I mean, it was covered in the inset appraisals that were undertaken at a fairly qualitative level, in that clearly the offline scheme...
Sorry, I missed that word.
Inset.
No, not inset. You said at a certain...
Qualitative level.
Qualitative,
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it was scored on a 1, 2, 3 scale, as were other factors, not as... We didn't have a precise number, if you like, allocated. But yes, it was scored consistently with other factors.
So, I mean, the inset, the inset report, was that the only tool that was used for evaluation?
Yes. So there are two different. Effectively, the DFT produces a guidance called EAST, which is a CD, and that you'll find that in the list. And that's the sort of the guidance for doing this sort of sifting.
So called EAST?
Yes, CD826, the early assessment and sifting tool, and variously most companies, consultants practicing in this area have their own equivalent of that tool. So there was McDonald's used to call a tool called Inset.
Yeah.
I think WSP and Atkins, who've both worked on the projects, have used what they've referred to as MCAF, so multi-criteria appraisal framework. Effectively, it's all the same thing. It's a means of assessing different schemes using the principles of what DFT have laid out for East.
Okay. And so, in terms of, if I understood, from what you said about inset and what I've read, that effectively sort of just gives a fairly simple score.
Yes.
In terms of obviously the sort of relatively high bar we need to look at in terms of considering sort of compulsory acquisition of third-party land. Again, I'm just keen to understand how that factored into it in terms of how you were looking at presumably trying to minimise the amount of land that would have to be acquired.
So it is one of the tools. Obviously, as we move forward, we then head towards the application of the Green Book and the business case process, again as set out in the Department of Transport's guidance. So this is very much driven by the approach mandated by the DFT, so the whole TAG approach, which is again a series of documents that you will find, whether it be CD817, for example, which gives guidance on business cases, and at that point, things like land values start being factored into the business case. Again, as you proceed from the SOBC to the OBC, you start doing more detailed referencing of land, appraisal of land prices, and those prices fit into the business case.
Yeah, and Mr. Whitehouse did take us through the sort of tag, the tag approach.
And the extent of the land take point was covered by Mr. Lonergan's from an engineering perspective as well.
Yeah, I was just keen to understand a bit more about how it factored into considering the options, particularly in terms of looking at alternatives, in light of the approach to compulsory acquisition, compulsory purchase. Actually, I think those are the questions I have, Mr. Baker. In which case, I'll hand you back to Mr. Cameron for any questions he's got in re-examination. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Just not very many, Mr. Baker, but one or two. One of the points you were asked about by Mr. Parker. So if you can wind back and think in your mind of when you were asked questions by Mr. Parker, and you were asked about the quick wins paper. Do you remember that? And you referred to it, and then you referred to the CPPF scheme proposals at the time of the audit. You were asked about that, and you referred to a caveat. That was all asked in the same series of questions. So I would like, if we can, because we didn't look at all the documents, can we just take up core document 1307, please? Do you have that
Yes,
to hand?
yep.
And if everybody else does? Now this is just let the inspectors get that. So this is a technical note produced by Mott MacDonald. Who commissioned this report?
The GCP.
And we can see it was approved by J. Baker.
Yes.
And if we go in that document to page 4, please. And we're going to look at 3.4.1 and just remind ourselves when this was produced. So it's 14th of May 2019. And so in terms of considering the detail of an on-road option, we have 3.4.1 inbound public transport lane from Madingley Mulch to the M11. And did Mott MacDonald consider the consequences of that proposal and the potential effects on Madingley Wood and on the American Military Cemetery?
Yes.
And what do they say at 3.4.1?
That those works would require earthworks or working areas that fall outside of the highway boundary. This note was looking.
Should we just
at,
have a look at what it says?
And it would have large impact on existing vegetation along the, it says 13, it means 1303 rather than 1307, that forms part of Madingley Wood, which is a site of special scientific interest, for example.
And then it said it would also require works to realign the highway at the entrance to the American Cemetery, impacting the existing frontage layout. And then we have the drawings which have been referred to.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, so we have that, so that's the Mott MacDonald report commissioned by the GCP. You referred to a caveat in the CPPF report. So can we go to core document 710, please? And And if we go to page 2, so this was, you were asked a series of questions about CPPF's position and how it was considered, and you referred to their different approaches. So on page 2, the last bit in bold, what was CPPF saying at that time?
At that point, what was said on that version of the document was, therefore, we recommend this package of quick win interventions to the Greater Cambridge Partnership and Combined Authority as an effective and low-cost interim solution, while the details of longer-term infrastructure schemes such as East-West Rail, the CAM network and the Girton interchange are worked out.
So at that stage, putting it forward as an low-cost interim solution. And the longer-term infrastructure that they referred to, East-West Rail, the CAM network and the Girton interchange, can we just take up core document 7.38, please, and find out what was envisaged by the CAM network, which they thought that their solution was an interim before CAM network and others were introduced. And if we go to core document 738, page 12, please. Did the CAM network include a route from Cambourne to Cambridge or not?
It did.
So if this was an interim before CAM, CAM would then provide a route from Cambourne to Cambridge and back.
Well, CAM would incorporate the Cambourne to Cambridge scheme as proposed by the GCP. If you look above that diagram on page 12, it talks about inner corridors, often referred to as the GCP corridors. So schemes such as the Cambourne to Cambridge scheme were seen as a part of the CAM network.
Thank you. Can we now go on to Ms. Gaisley's questions? The inspector intervened and asked you about why the northern option through Ms. Gaisley's land and CPPF's land was not pursued. Can we take up core document 11006, please, which is the ES addendum? And when you've got that, can we go in that, please, when I've got it, to, since June 2025, to 2.4.3 on page 15. There's a section 2.4, consideration of alternatives. And I think you covered most of these points, but just, sir, so you've got the reference to where the explanation is set out. So we see at 2.4.2, the northern option was presented to the directly affected parties, namely CPPF, who own the fields west of Cambridge Road, and with Houston Crest Properties Limited, who own the orchard. And then you set out what CPPF said, and they say, notwithstanding this, that 2.4.3, their stated concerns with the northern option included its increased severance of their fields west of the orchard and consequent reduced viability as agricultural holdings, its location higher up the slope of Madingley Hill, making it more visible, the increased scale of necessary earthworks further exacerbating landscape and visual impact, requirement for crossing in a more open countryside location away from the village, inherent risk of harm and urbanising impact on the village setting, and lessened opportunity for landscape screening. So is that a summary of CPPF's points in relation to the northern option? And 2.4.4, you set out what the objective had been, to avoid the original Bramley apple trees, but given all those responses, we know what the decision taken was, not to pursue the northern option. And you then referred to operational safety grounds in your oral evidence, and at 2.4.5, is that where we find them set out?
Yes.
Thank you. You were asked some questions by the inspectors about bus franchising, constitutional arrangements for combined authority, and so on. Can we just turn on the bus arrangements point to the consultation report, and I'd like to go to core document 10616, please. And if you go to page 38, we have a response from Stagecoach. Are they in favour of or against the scheme?
They supported the proposals for a segregated busway between Cambourne and Cambridge and a new travel hub at Dry Drayton.
And do they, at that stage, and this is 21st September 23, give any indication of the success or otherwise of the existing segregated bus service?
They comment that it's been thriving since its opening in 2011, and that busway has bucked the trend, as they refer to, and continues to operate with full services.
Thank you. Now on to constitutional arrangements, and you made reference to the, I gave the reference to the combined authority order, a matter of law. But can we go to core document 957 on page 51, please, which is the Constitution. And you should have paragraph 7.1.6.2. Do you have that?
Yeah.
Wait till the inspectors have got it. Now, this has heading special voting. So, is this or is it not the provision you were referring to? If it's something else, please tell me.
It is what I was referring to.
So 7.1.6.2, a decision on a question relating to any spending plans or plans for the allocation of transport funding, and you've told us that bus franchising would involve spending money, requires a vote in favour by at least 2/3 of all members appointed by the constituent councils, to include the members appointed by Cambridgeshire County Council and Peterborough City Council or their substitute members.
Yeah.
So can a proposal be put forward to spend money without the support of the County Council or indeed the Peterborough City Council?
My understanding of this clause in the Constitution is that it cannot.
Thank you. Last question to ask you about, you were asked, totally different subject, about assumed hours of working for the bus service. Can we take up, and this is maybe for Mr. Saunders later, but let's just have a look in the environmental statement on the assumptions that were made. And if we go to the environmental statement, main volume, CD 1-10-1. Page 24, para 3.1.3. And we can see when it says the new bus service is expected to operate approximately between 6 in the morning and midnight, in line with existing Cambridge guided bus services, but used most intensively between 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. Is that your understanding of the proposals as they stand?
That is of the proposals as we considered in the environmental statement. As I say, I think the approach is precautionary, so we assume in the environmental statement the worst case from an environmental perspective. We won't necessarily in the business case assume as much, because again we need to be precautionary in the way we consider both impacts.
In the business case, did you assume that it would be running within the hours assessed in the environmental statement or outside them?
It will be within the hours assessed in the environmental statement.
Thank you very much. No other questions for you.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Thank you, Mr. Parker. I'm going to suggest that we shortly adjourn for lunch before we consider with today's proceedings. I just wanted to go through my notes. I made a note of 3 either sort of clarifications or documents to pick up. So just so that I'm clear as to what we're waiting for. I think the first one, I think Mr. Barker, Mr. Cameron asked you for an update, I think, on progress or the position in terms of negotiations with landowners to the west of the Comberton Greenway. Yeah. Have I described that correctly?
Yes. It's to the west of the Comberton Greenway, so it's the dotted green lines on that. On that plan we looked at for the Greenway, and also the dotted blue lines on the cycling strategy.
The second one was either sort of signposting to something that's in the evidence or something else, an illustration of what solar studs are, how they're used, what they look like, and how they work, just so that we're clear as to what the likely implications are. Obviously conscious that detailed design isn't at this stage. And I think there was also Mr. Clegg asked for details of sort of routing beyond Grange Road through the city centre. Did I get that correct?
A variation of that, really. It was an indication of the existing network.
Apologies.
It's the existing
guided busway.
Bus network in Cambridge and Cambourne.
The existing guided bus network.
The guided bus. It was the existing Cambridge guided busway.
You're partly right, Mr. Cameron. It was the existing guided bus network and the existing network between Cambourne and Cambridge. Because I had a query about the reference to there just being the number 4 service that ran between the two.
That's what I had understood, so that it wasn't all round the whole of Cambridge.
That's right.
And
yes, we don't need that.
So on the solar studs, Mr. Henderson's going to be calling Ms. Reason hopefully today, and she will be able to deal with that point.
Good.
I think you picked up the other thing. The other note was just a clarification of exactly which services run between Cambourne and Cambridge.
So we've got that all in the last request. It's in the TA. But before I just give you the reference, we'll check that it's still up to date.
Yes.
That's in the TA, and then we'll let you know.
Because they change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's really helpful, sir, to have a reminder, and I hope those sitting to our right have made a note of them, and we'll...
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barker, sorry. Let's just wait for the microphone, because the recording doesn't pick it up otherwise.
Sorry, sir, I anticipated that you were about to say let's adjourn for lunch.
You anticipated correctly.
I'm just slightly concerned about timing. I don't want to have a long discussion about timing because it takes up the time, but we do have 2 witnesses who we want to get through ideally by this afternoon. I'm happy, no one needs to be prejudiced, I'm happy to sort of cut my cloth accordingly in terms of time for questions, all that sort of stuff. I just wanted to flag it up before we broke for lunch. One of the options might be to take a slightly shorter lunch break. But again, I know people need a break, but I'm just concerned about about getting to the end of the day, having got through everything that we did want to get through, so I just flag that up.
Okay. Chair, that's okay.
So I mean, I'm conscious that obviously lunch breaks aren't just for people to have a comfort break and eat lunch. There's a lot of work that goes on sort of behind the scenes. So I mean, if I were to say that we had just under 3/4 of an hour and came back at 1:30, Mr. Cameron, how would that?
We can cope with that, sir, but we wouldn't like to make a habit of it.
No, that's it. Yeah, because inspectors do more than just eat lunch during the breaks
Exactly.
as well.
And Mr. Parker's looking forward to going somewhere else at the end of the day. Well, I actually happen not to be here tomorrow, but the team and you have to carry on, and that's why it's important to stick to the breaks.
So in that case, I make it 12:47. We'll adjourn now, but we'll resume at 1:30.